Chapter 712. Luo Qingshun rushed to the rental place almost without stopping. She was not 100% sure that she could succeed. But to change Luo Gong's mind, she must give him hope. At the same time, Luo Bai, who was holding a telescope not far away, saw Luo Qingshun's figure and said to the walkie-talkie, "Everyone, don't do anything. It's the eldest miss. How could it be Qingshun? Shouldn't it be Zhuqiyu? What went wrong?" The small bearded sentinel at the rental place glanced at the sign in her hand, looked at each other, and let her go. Luo Gong also hurriedly called Kuchi and told him that the plan had changed, asking him to directly refuse Luo Qingshun's rental. But Kuchi didn't seem to intend to cancel the plan. After all, the relationship between him and Luo Jia had always been that he was the master and Luo Jia was the servant. If the master wanted to play the game, the servant was not qualified to resist. Most of the renting places were Japanese, only a few rich people. The moment she stepped into the rental place, there was always a feeling of stepping into the land of the Japanese. But this land clearly belonged to them. In the early years of the Republic of China, the Qing people were weak and incompetent, and the four powers rose. Anqing was a small city, but it was the only way to go. She took a deep breath and walked into Kuchi's mansion. As soon as she entered the door, a piece of elegant music came into her ears from Japanese opera. Because of the skill exchange, she could clearly understand the meaning of the lyrics. The general meaning was, "The emperor is forever. You slaves submit to the feet. Dirty." Luo Qingshun took a deep breath and walked in. Kuchi sat in the center of the round table, with four beautiful dancers sitting beside him, white face and red lips, looking a bit scary. "Welcome, Miss Luo, to my humble home." Kuchi thought for a moment and said, No. Come to my luxurious mansion. After all, compared to the many thatched houses on Ping'an Street, this mansion is much more high-end." Haha. Kuchi spoke in Japanese, but Luo Qingshun understood every word very clearly. Gold and jade on the outside, rotten on the inside. Luo Qingshun's eyes turned cold. Using the words of the great motherland, she had completely defeated him. He rolled his eyes and looked at the lackey interpreter next to him, trying to find the meaning of this sentence. The lackey translator was a little embarrassed, but he still patiently translated everything in Japanese. Luo Qingshun heard this and gave a cold laugh before saying in Japanese, "This translation is wrong." "You speak Japanese?" Mr. Kuchi raised his right hand, and the music stopped abruptly. The translator looked at her awkwardly. Luo Qingshun chuckled and said in Japanese, "The translator is probably not needed. You can leave first." Kuchi's lips curled as he looked at Luo Qingshun with a deep meaning. "But the person who killed Mr. Haida, I didn't believe it at first, but now it seems like international students really are different." "You flatter me," Luo Qingshun snorted. "Compared to Mr. Kuchi, I should have killed a lot less people." "That's natural. I never blink when killing people." Kuchi casually picked up the pistol on the table and slowly loaded it. "Miss Luo, don't you know that we're on the same side?" Luo Gong was his lackey, and all the Luo family were his slaves. The person in front of him was the same. He hated arrogant slaves the most in his life. Since she was a slave, she should act like a slave, instead of standing in front of him and pretending. Chapter 713. You can only gamble with your life here. Kuchi crossed his arms and looked at her with contempt. He knew where Luo Gong's weakness was, so what if he lost a daughter? As long as the old lady was in his hands, he would always be his lackey. Luo Qingshun looked at the dice on the table and shrugged. "No problem." "Oh." Kuchi looked at her with deep meaning. "What is Miss Luo good at?" "In the emperor's eyes, ladies first." "I saw Mr. Kuchi playing dice with your dancer just now. Why don't we play something simple?" She raised her eyebrows slightly and said with a very faint smile, "Let's also play dice." Sigh. Mr. Kuchi moved his tongue and pretended to be regretful. "This world is going to lose another beautiful lady. Let's wait and see." Luo Qingshun chuckled with a trace of unknown exploration in her eyes. The gambling method this time was very simple. Each person would take 5 dice and roll them in the goo. 6 was the highest, and 1 was the lowest. Whoever had the largest number of dice would win. One game to decide the winner. Kuchi smiled contemptuously. After all, the Emperor doesn't have that much time. As you wish. Luo Qingshan smiled and said, let the purple-dressed dancer next to you roll the dice for me. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. The woman in front of them came here alone to make a bet with Kuchi, who had never lost before. The important thing was that she was gambling with her life, and she was still able to let someone roll the dice for her so easily. Clap, 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 clap. Mr. Kuchi clapped his hands and said, interesting. If Mr. Kuchi agrees, I'll tell you my request. Luo Qingshan narrowed her eyes and looked at him. If I win, I'll ask Mr. Kuchi to let me take one of my second brother's twin nephews away. My second brother only has 2 children, and it has been so many years, he misses them very much. She didn't say her grandmother because she knew Kuchi wouldn't agree. If that was the case, then this bet would not start. Taking away a child was not a big deal to him. Moreover, it was only one child. No problem. Kuchi sneered and said a few words to the sentinel behind him, then said, let's begin. Not long after, the sentinel brought in the twins from the Luo family. All of them had different degrees of injuries on their bodies. Their bodies were as thin as firewood, but their eyes were filled with determination and manliness. Annie, Luo Qingshan gently nodded and didn't say anything. Instead, she said to the dancer in purple, if you are ready, you can start shaking at any time. The purple-clothed dancer snorted and looked at Lai Yi with a charming smile. Mr. Lai Yi, don't go easy on me this time. I can't wait to smell the blood. The dancer was already wearing heavy makeup, and with those words, she looked like she had fallen into hell. Following, there was the sound of the dice shaking inside the goo. After a while, she stopped and winked at Mr. Kuchi. Mr. Kuchi, guess what it is? Oh, my little beauty. Kuchi rubbed his mustache on her face. It must be 5. Otherwise, I'll make sure you can't get out of bed tonight. Oh, Mr. Kuchi, you're so bad. Miss Luo, if you lose, you have to admit defeat, Kuchi said as he shook the dice. His eyes were filled with malice. Chapter 714. After that, the sound of the dice rolling stopped. Mr. Kuchi looked at Luo Qingshan and said, then I'll open it. Open it. When Kuchi and the dancer opened the lid at the same time, Luo Qingshan silently said in her heart, space and time freeze. Ding, 500 exchange points has been taken. Successfully exchanged for space and time freeze can only be used in this world. They really are fools. They don't know that there is something called a system in this world. They definitely don't know. Luo Qingshan slowly turned the 5 6s in Kuchi's dice into 5 1s. Then she turned the random numbers in the dancer's dice into 5 6s. After she finished, she clapped her hands and returned to her original position. After 3 seconds, the space and time freeze was released. She immediately said, it seems like the balance of fate is leaning towards my side, Mr. Kuchi. After that, Kuchi lowered his head and the smile on his face instantly froze. His face was completely red with anger, and the dancer on the side had a pale face. Her lips trembled as she said, no, Mr. Kuchi, it wasn't me. So you were a traitor. Kuchi picked up the gun beside him and shot without any hesitation. The dancer's brain exploded and blood splattered everywhere. The air was filled with a bloody smell. I wonder if Mr. Kuchi is willing to accept his loss? Luo Qingshan's expression slightly changed. Her voice was very relaxed, but the meaning of her words was very clear. All right. Kuchi revealed a cold smile and said, so what if I let you take a hostage? Your Luo family will still work for me. Dogs. You people are only worthy of being dogs. Luo Qingshan suppressed the anger in her heart as her lips curled as she said, if the emperor is this powerful, he wouldn't be staying in the concession. If a Ning city hadn't fallen, the Japanese could only stay in the concession forever. Bakayaro. He angrily roared out as he pointed his gun at Luo Qingshan and said, do you believe that I won't shoot you? Oh, Luo Qingshan said coldly. So Mr. Kuchi is such an untrustworthy person. Is your emperor also so untrustworthy? Is this what your countrymen call goading? Kuchi let out a long sigh and said, take one of your nephews and scram. The next time we meet, I will dig out your heart and give it to our emperor. Scram! Luo Qingqian's eyes lit up as she walked in front of her two nephews. Luo Ping pointed at his younger brother, Luo Fan. Auntie, take little Fan and leave first. But, brother, Luo Fan frowned as tears welled up at his eyes. Ever since he was young, it was his older brother who protected him. The two of them lived like slaves in the Japanese mansion. But his brother still didn't give up. He left the steam buns for him. He could last a day with just one bite. Stop nagging. Luo Qingqian glanced at Luo Ping. Stay here and take care of Grandma. Take care of yourself. Auntie, Luo Ping held her hand and said, we can't let the Luo family become like this. I'm not afraid of death, but I want to die a worthy death. Luo Qingqian would never have thought that such a sentence would come from the mouth of a boy less than 10 years old. This time, in her eyes, Luo Ping was braver than her father, Luo Gong. Without the country, there would be no home. In troubled times, the country must be first. Luo Gong's foolish filial piety reduced the Luo family to a traitor. Chapter 715. Reporting. When she was prepared to leave, a Japanese soldier came in and said, "And Ning City's young commander Zhuamu Ran is here to see Mr. Kuchi." Luo Qingqian trembled as her heart jumped into her throat. Damn, what was he doing here? The person the Japanese wanted to kill the most came to Mr. Kuchi's manor. Wasn't he sending himself to death? Zhuamu Ran. Kuchi's eyes were filled with killing intent as his probing eyes fell onto Luo Qingqian. I've heard that when you killed our leader, Sir Haida, you took 2 bullets for Commander Zhua. Is this true? I think there is a mistake in the rumors. Luo Qingqian narrowed her eyes. If the Japanese army isn't wrong, I should be wearing the clothes of a student on the battlefield. This was indeed an accident. Kuchi looked at her from head to toe and believed her words. After all, the soldiers had mentioned more than once that it was a girl in a blue dress who looked like a foreign student who killed Haida. If this was a premeditated assassination by the Luo family, it definitely wouldn't be like this. I have a general understanding of young Miss Luo's goal in coming to my manor this time. He lit a cigar and took a deep puff before saying, "How about we make another bet? I'm afraid that I've used up all my luck. How about another day?" Luo Qingqian knit her brows and politely refused. Zhuamu Ran was a tumor in the eyes of the Japanese army. Kuchi definitely wanted to kill him. If she let him in, she wasn't certain if she could protect him. No, definitely not. Let commanders will come in. Kuchi spread his arms. Kuchi am very hospitable. Naturally, I welcome anyone who wants to come. Luo Qingqian felt that her breathing had slowed down by half a beat. Kuchi definitely wouldn't let him go. What to do? Why isn't young Miss Luo leaving yet? Kuchi's eyes had a dangerous smile as he said, "Since young Miss Luo doesn't want to keep gambling, then please leave. You can leave with one of your nephews at any time. If I say I won't stop you, I definitely won't stop you." Luo Qingqian heard this and tightly knit her brows. She naturally knew the meaning of Kuchi's words. He was already gambling. He was betting that she would not leave. Fine. After a while, she looked at Kuchi and said, "But I hope that Mr. Kuchi can keep the bet and let my nephew go first." "Auntie, shut up." "Haha, no problem." Kuchi laughed and said, "It seems that in Miss Luo's eyes, Commander Zhua is really different." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and ordered the servants to remove the dancer's body and the dining table. He picked up a gun in his left hand and a gold coin with Japanese patterns in his right hand. His eyes were filled with killing intent. Luo Qingqian held her breath and said, "It seems that Mr. Kuchi wants to bet something different this time. That kind of child's play is not exciting at all. I like excitement the most in my life." Kuchi chuckled. "What's wrong? Miss Luo is scared. I'm not even afraid of gambling with my life. Tell me, what else is there to be afraid of?" "Of course there is." Kuchi smiled coldly. "Your people always say that I will protect her even if I die. How stupid is this sentence in the eyes of the emperor? My life is higher than everyone else, higher than my parents and children. They can all die, but I must live." Chapter 716. Could it be that young Miss Luo thinks that a traitor like Luo Gong and a traitor like the Luo family would be happy for you? Koei pointed his gun at Luo Qingchen and said, "Peng, the answer is no." Luo Qingchen closed her eyes and was too lazy to say anything to him, so she called the system. "Did my nephew leave safely?" He took a shortcut and is already out of the concession." Her lips curled as she said, "Mr. Koei really keeps his word. Tell me, how do you want to bet?" Although Luo Qingchen was very clear that Koei kept his word. "We'll still bet our lives." He waved the gold coin in his hand. "My emperor's gold coin, whether his blades or bullets, they can't penetrate it." He paused for a moment before continuing. "Let's bet on your life and his life." Koei slowly came to her side and placed the gold coin in her heart. He blew at his mustache as he said with a strange smile, "Do you think the young commander's Zhuo with his first-class gun skills can hit this gold coin?" Luo Qingchen's face instantly turned pale. She immediately understood what Koei wanted to bet. It really was abnormal. Before she could understand, Zhuo Ran had already appeared in front of her. There were two guards by his side who raised their guns at him. Koei looked like he was the host as he roared at his subordinates. "Put down your guns. If our young commander, Zhuo, wanted your lives, how could you still stand there and point your guns at him?" "Yes, sir." Zhuo Ran's eyes had been on Luo Qingchen the entire time. His brows were tightly knit and his eyes were ice cold. He had just received information that the Luo family's identity was a bit suspicious, because it was his big brother, Zhuqiyu, who came to the concession, and Luo Gong was in charge of coordinating from the inside. But according to the information, the Luo family didn't send anyone to help Zhuqiyu. The so-called coordination from the inside was all fake. This made him doubt the Luo family's identity. Were they loyal or traitorous? But why did this person called Luo Qingchen come to the concession in place of her big brother at the last moment? What was it for? Why was his heart so flustered? "Hello, Commander Zhuo," Kuchi said in broken Chinese. "I'm making a bet with Ms. Luo, but it's boring to be alone. Why don't you join us?" Luo Qingchen's eyes narrowed slightly. Li Guang's clear eyes flickered. An emergency plan quickly flashed through his mind. How could he win and survive? "Stop wasting words." Zhuo Ran's voice was very cold, without a trace of warmth. His lips slightly pursed as he said, quickly, what he hated the most in his life was the Japanese's concession. Every brick and tile here was a disgrace to his countrymen. Even the air was so dirty. Pa. Kuchi clapped his hands and put the AK pistol in his hand on the ground, landing at Zhuo Ran's feet. He shrugged and said, "Pick it up and we'll start immediately." Zhuo Ran's brows slightly changed. When he picked up the gun, he knew that it was loaded. Kuchi was so bold to let him hold the gun. It must not be simple. This bet is very simple. Kuchi put glue on the gold coin and placed it over Luo Qingchen's heart. Then he gave two laughs before saying to Zhuo Ran, "There's only a single bullet in that gun, so you have many chances. As long as you hit the gold coin, it's your win." Chapter 717. No. Kuchi seriously shook his head. "How can young Miss Luo speak so rudely? You're much cuter just now." Luo Qingchen took a deep breath and gave a cold snort. "What benefits do we get if we win? You can all leave. I promise I won't kill you." Kuchi's eyes popped out, and he blew at his beard, looking like he was high up. Zhuo Ran's deep eyes had a cold look as he slowly raised his gun. "If I don't shoot, what can you do?" He didn't know what was wrong with him, since in theory, if the Luo family had already defected and become traitors to the Japanese, then Luo Qingchen would be in less danger if she came to the Luo family. But he couldn't control himself and wanted to find her, even if this was the first time in his life that he had fallen into such a dangerous situation. Moreover, he didn't have a way out. Kuchi didn't understand Zhuo Ran's words, so he called over the original translator. After hearing this, he thoughtfully stroked his beard. "It's fine if you don't shoot, but I still haven't finished explaining the rules of the game, right? I'm a very easy person to talk to. If you don't want to do this, then you can change." He didn't give him a chance to refute, as he directly said, "Then I'll shoot you in the head, and I'll let young Miss Luo go." Luo Qingchen's expression instantly froze. Before the translator could say anything to Zhuo Ran, she already said to him, "Definitely not." Although Zwamu Ran only had 1% affection for her, he definitely wouldn't do something as stupid as this. But when she heard Kuchi's words, her heart skipped a beat. Kuchi seemed to understand her words as he said with a sinister smile. It seems like young Miss Luo and Commander Zwa's relationship is deeper than just meeting once. He was speaking in Japanese, so Zwamu Ran couldn't understand it, but he could hear a trace of danger in Kuchi's voice. It was said that Commander Zwa, who protected Ning City, only wanted to protect his country. He couldn't hold any other feelings in his heart. A person without any restraints would always be able to make decisive decisions. This was also why the Japanese hadn't been able to find any of his weaknesses after so many years. But now, Kuchi seemed to have found it. I believe you. There was a faint sparkle in Luo Qing Chen's eyes. Standing not far away from him, her face was a bit pale. Zwamu Ran's heart suddenly felt like it was being hit. It was very heavy and painful. The girl in front of him was clearly seriously injured, but she was determined to come here for her big brother. That meant that she knew the relationship between the Luo family and Kuchi. She said she didn't want Zwamu go. Could it? Could it? He took him for her. Did they know each other? He didn't know why, but when he thought of this, a very strange feeling vaguely emerged from the depths of his heart. He promised he had never felt this before. Yo, yo, yo. Kuchi waved his hands excitedly and said, I like this kind of performance the most. It's so much better than the dancers' songs. Kuchi's goal was very simple. He just wanted to know, what position did the Luo family's young miss have in Zwamu Ran's heart? Even if his marksmanship was shocking and he hit the gold coin today, if he knew his weakness in the future, he could still use the Luo family's young miss. Chapter 718. Luo Qingchen had already thought of a countermeasure. As long as Zwamu Ran pulled the trigger, she would instantly freeze the gun. She would be able to aim the bullet at the gold coin. That way, even if Zwamu Ran missed, she wouldn't lose her life, but her young commanders would seem a bit hesitant as he slowly put down the gun he had raised. Shoot! Luo Qingchen anxiously looked at him and said, It doesn't matter if you shoot with your eyes closed, you'll definitely hit. She was someone with a system. All right, this thing was too amazing. I have a question to ask you. Zwamu Ran's tightly knit brows suddenly relaxed, and there was a faint layer of mist over his deep dark eyes. It was too far, and Luo Qingchen couldn't see it clearly. But her heart was pounding, and it was so scary. She shook her head gently, indicating that Kuchi had a translator who could understand their conversation. But Zwamu Ran didn't seem to care as he repeated his question, Can I? No. Luo Qingchen took a deep breath and pursed her lips. Ask. What was wrong with this person? He wasn't focused on shooting at this critical moment and was asking questions. Did you know my big brother before? He seemed a bit embarrassed and hesitated for a while before asking this question. He wanted to know, this girl taking the bullet for him without any hesitation, was it because of his big brother or because of him? The words devote yourself to him flashed through his mind at this moment. He was so persistent in wanting to know the answer to this question. Luo Qingchen heard this and was stunned. What kind of question was this? I don't know him. Luo Qingchen continued, Can you shoot now? The translator behind them relayed their conversation to Koi, and Koi's lips curled even more as he listened. There was a dangerous glow in his eyes that made people tremble. Then why did you come in his place? He looked into his eyes and said in a deep voice, You know that this is a trap. Because I'm afraid you hate me. Luo Qingchen looked at her eyes and knew that she probably knew the identity of the Luo family. However, he still resolutely came to save her despite the danger. This 1% of favorable impression points seemed to be worth it. I already have the chance to like you. How can I have the chance to hate you? With a chuckle, he slowly raised his hand and looked at her with a hint of affection in his eyes. It seems that I can't repay you with my body. When Luo Qingchen heard him say this, she only felt her breathing stagnate, and her fingertips unconsciously trembled. She stuttered, You? What are you doing? Good heavens! It was only 1% favorable impression points. She didn't need to do such a crazy thing for him, right? This really didn't conform to common sense. Zwamu Ran didn't say anything and just kept moving. Luo Qingchen said anxiously, I said, I believe you, but I don't believe in myself. His dim eyes suddenly became incomparably clear, and there was a faint gentleness on that cold and handsome face. There were some things he could bet on, but there were some things he couldn't bet on. In the next second, he raised the gun to his temple. His eyes were the same as before, firmly looking at her. Chapter 719. Before she could feel the pleasant surprise of going from 1% to 100%, the man in front of her already wanted to pull the trigger. Space and time freeze. She almost shouted out these 4 words as the bullet slowly came out of the muzzle. It was a good thing the system was reliable this time. Ding! 500 exchange points has been taken. Successfully exchanged for space and time freeze. Can only be used in this world. My God, what'd it do? Luo Qingshun took a deep breath and ran towards Zhuangmu Ran, taking the gun from his hand. Half of the bullet's head was already exposed. Just looking at this scene made her feel a little nervous. Now that she had exchanged for a skill, there was no need to keep Kuchi's life. She put the gun in Kuchi's right hand, and his index finger touched the trigger. Using her fastest speed, she dragged Zhuangmu Ran to a small corner and stood by his side. 10 seconds later, the space and time freeze was released. Pong! There was a large gunshot that sounded in their ears. Kuchi fell straight to the ground, dark red blood filling his eyes. His eyes were wide open as he stared in front of him in disbelief. Ah! The dog interpreter called out in shock, but he was the only one standing by Kuchi at this time. He trembled as he shook his head. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Luo Qingshun was tightly holding the hand of the person beside her as her heart beat fast. Zhuangmu Ran still hadn't recovered from the scene just now. His cold eyes looked at Luo Qingshun as he said in a low voice, "What happened?" Pong, pong, pong. Before she could explain, there were gunshots at the door. Luo Qingshun heard a familiar voice that came from her father, Luo Gong. It seemed like Luo Fan had returned to the Luo family, and her father had finally made a brave decision. I'm going out first. Luo Qingshun looked at Zhuangmu Ran beside her and said, if he was still a bad person, he wouldn't have shot me. Don't. When she was about to leave, Zhuangmu Ran grabbed her sleeve and said with a firm look that couldn't be refused, I won't let you walk in front of me again. She looked into his eyes and suddenly understood what kind of person Zhuangmu Ran was. He had never come into contact with love, so he couldn't see through it. This could probably explain why she had taken 2 bullets for him and still only received 1% favorability. Zhuangmu Ran didn't even know when he fell in love with someone. But when he really calmed down and slowly recalled, he couldn't let it go anymore, huh? Before she could react, Zhuangmu Ran had already walked out holding her hand. When he saw Luo Gong and Zhuqiyu at the same time, he knew that the Luo clan had already rebelled. Ching! Luo Gong almost rushed towards her. He, who had always been strong, was crying at this moment. It was his fault for putting his daughter in such a dangerous situation. After Luo Fan safely returned to the Luo family, he brought with him a letter written in blood by his old mother. Every word in the letter was like a bullet hitting his heart, making him feel no shame at all. Even a half-buried man could contribute to his country, but he did such a foolish thing. Traitor. He had been a traitor for 4 years, providing information to the Japanese. Chapter 720. After Kuchi died, the power of the concession was greatly weakened. There weren't even any sentries. There were only normal rich people living there. There were very few Japanese. This time the Luo family and the Zhou family had broken their enmity. Luo Gong thought that Zhuangmu Ran would tell the people of Ning City that the Luo family had been traitors for 4 years, but Zhuangmu Ran didn't. Kuchi's death removed a large hidden danger in Ning City, but he was still an important person who died in the concession. The upright official still sent someone to investigate. The Luo family and the Zhuo family both knew that the Qing dynasty was afraid of Zhuangmu Ran's popularity, afraid of the Luo family and the Zhuo family's power. This upright official, by show, isn't easy to deal with. Luo Gong stroked his beard and said, he's like a dog of the Japanese. Don't mention by show. Luo Qingshun sipped her tea and said, even the court is like a dog of the Japanese. We'll take it one step at a time. He can't play any tricks with the people. Luo Gong's eyes sunk as a bit of worry appeared in his eyes. Luo Qingshun could understand his current feelings. Kuchi was finally dead and her old mother was saved. When she could finally use the Luo family's power to do something, there was another uninvited guest. Reporting. The housekeeper came in and said to everyone, "Mr. Yi Yongjun is here to see you." Yi Yongjun? Luo Qingshun silently repeated this person's name in her heart. Scum, scum, scum. Because she had been completely attracted by the male and female lead story when she received the memories, she had completely forgotten about the supporting male lead. The previous host's childhood friend, a scum who looked gentle on the surface but had a wretched heart. A fellow who loved to brag. After the Luo family was destroyed, he immediately married another young miss and quickly cut off all relations. This kind of person, why did he come looking for her? Yongjun, Luo Gong nodded with a smile. Quickly invite him in. What did he mean by quickly invite him in? And Ning City should be able to live a peaceful life for now. We should consider the marriage between Qing and Yongjun. Luo Gong seemed very satisfied with Yi Yongjun's appearance, nodding as he praised him. After a while, Yi Yongjun came in. He wasn't considered ugly, but he was a bit. He looked a little tired, as if he had overindulged himself. He was wearing a small suit and a round British hat. He bowed to Luo Gong in a gentlemanly manner and said with sincerity in his eyes, "I heard that Qing had returned, so I immediately rushed over." Looking at his jealous and flattering look, Luo Qingshun felt nauseous. She frowned and looked at Yi Yongjun. "It seems that you have more than one type of rouge and powder on your body." Yi Yongjun's expression suddenly became a little awkward, and he continued, "It's all because of my mother, who likes foreign things. She likes to wipe this and that all day long." Luo Qingshun sneered and didn't say anything else. She got up and said to Luo Gong, "Dad, I'm going to the room to change." "That what?" She looked back coldly at Yi Yongjun and said, "Do you want to follow me?" No, Qing misunderstood. Yi Yongjun winked at her and said with a greasy look, "I'll wait here for you to come back." MMP. Luo Qingshun couldn't help cursing in her heart as she walked upstairs. She changed into a white dress and took out an umbrella before sneaking out from the back door. There would be time to clean up this Yi Yongjun, but not now. Chapter 721. The matter of Luo Qingshun killing Hitoda and Kuchi had spread through Ning City, so much so that when she was standing at the entrance of the Zhuo Manor, the sentries looked at each other in blank dismay, but they didn't stop her. "Miss Luo, please come in." Actually, Luo Qingshun didn't know because someone had already told her. The sentries didn't follow her. After she walked around the Zhuo Manor twice, she accidentally came to the military training ground. She saw Jin Wendan and Su Zhengliang again, as well as the soldiers' training. "Why are you here?" Jin Wendan knit her brows. "Don't you know that this is the Zhuo Manor's military training ground?" Her tone wasn't good. The rumors outside the city were all about her, and Zhuomu ran. What a match! What a match made in heaven! The brave girl who never showed mercy against the Japanese. Hey, if it wasn't for Commander Zhuo, what could she do? She just shot a few bullets, and she could act arrogantly in the concession. I just don't know, so what? Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and revealed a casual smile. "Are you going to beat me?" "You." Jin Wendan took out her gun. "You think I don't dare?" "Wendan." Su Zhengliang immediately grabbed the muzzle of her gun. "Don't cause trouble." As an adjutant, Su Zhengliang's rank was much higher than Jin Wendan's. He naturally knew why she was angry and his heart ached for her. He had always silently watched this person, but she liked another person, and this was the commander who was much stronger than him. He wasn't dissatisfied. He just felt a bit uncomfortable in his heart. "Big brother Zhengliang." "You." Jin Wendan angrily bit her lip. "Why are you helping her?" That's Su Zhengliang who had taken care of her since she entered the army. The Su Zhengliang who she knew clearly only liked her. How could he help someone else? Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes. Naturally, she could hear everything from their conversation. There was a person who didn't easily reject someone who knew that they liked him. enjoying the good the other side brought, feeling that it was natural. Whenever he helped someone else one day, she would feel uncomfortable in her heart. But what she didn't know was that it was only natural that he didn't treat her well. I just don't think you have the guts. Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and chuckled. Shoot if you have the ability. Let me see how accurate your marksmanship is. Miss Luo, Su Zhongliang growled. If you came uninvited, could you please leave first? Even if I came uninvited, it's not up to you to make me leave. Luo Qingshun raised her eyes and said, Is this the Su residence or the Jin residence? Sure, you force me. Jin Wendan narrowed her eyes and pushed Su Zhongliang hard. She loaded the gun and pulled the trigger in Luo Qingshun's direction. Such an impulsive Jin Wendan made Luo Qingshun feel a trace of doubt. Even if Jin Wendan liked Zhumu Ran and didn't like her, even if her words made her angry. But would an army sniper fire so impulsively? Pung, 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 pung. Jin Wendan fired 5 times, and Su Zhongliang's face turned white. Space and time freeze. Ding, 500 exchange points has been taken. Successfully exchanged for space and time freeze. One-time use. Chapter 722. The closest bullet stopped 10 centimeters in front of her, and she moved the bullet back to its original position. She revealed a faint smile, and her surroundings returned to normal. The 5 bullets hit the wooden stake behind her, and Luo Qingshun said with a cold laugh, This is the so-called sniper? Hee, it really is too bad to watch. Su Zhongliang on the side angrily came over and took the gun from her hand, slamming on the ground as he roared, Jin Wendan, what are you doing? Do you know how the commander would have dealt with you if you had hit? He simply didn't dare believe that she could shoot this easily. It would have been a life if she had been hit. Jin Wendan tightly bit her lip and said, I don't believe that the commander would deal with me. After all these years, she had hurt civilians in battle before, but Zhumu Ran had taken it for her. How could he deal with her for someone from a trader's family? Luo Qingshun crossed her arms and casually looked over Jin Wendan. A sniper who can't even hit the target. Continue. Young Miss Luo. Su Zhongliang looked at her and said, It's too dangerous. Wendan's mood isn't stable. You should leave first. Hee. Luo Qingshun said with a cold laugh. She can't hit me with her skills. All right. Jin Wendan's eyes were completely red as she broke free from Su Zhongliang's grasp and used her fastest speed to reload the bullet. She pointed the gun at Luo Qingshun and said, I killed a piece of trash from a trader's family. No one will blame me. Hiss. As soon as these words came out, the soldiers who were originally shocked instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. They looked at each other in blank disbelief. I killed Hunta, so it can be considered that I killed Kuchi. Luo Qingshun said with a cold snort. If I was a traitor, I should have killed you, right? Zhumu Ran couldn't tell anyone about the Luo family. How could Jin Wendan know? Unless, in short, she bit her lip and said, I'm called ridding the world of evil. Bang! In the next second, before Jin Wendan could pull the trigger, a bullet flew past her and hit Jin Wendan's right hand without any deviation. The pistol fell to the ground and blood flowed out. Luo Qingshun was slightly stunned. The moment she looked back, she fell into a warm embrace. Young Marshal. The soldiers' voices were neat and loud. But Zhumu Ran didn't respond. His eyes were very cold, and the haze in his eyes could freeze everything around him. Don't be afraid. His voice was slightly trembling. If he hadn't gone to the Luo residence and wasted some time, he would have been dead already. I'm not afraid. Luo Qingshun blushed with embarrassment. Everyone is watching. Zhumu Ran held her very tightly, as if he was afraid of losing a treasure, completely ignoring the gazes of everyone around them. Young Marshal. Jin Wendan sniffled, her eyes instantly filled with tears. You know me, I won't shoot at random. She is a traitor breaking into the Zhuo residence. I have to guarantee the safety of my brothers. What righteous words! Every word was sonorous and forceful. It was like a messenger of justice. How high and mighty! Who told you that she is a traitor? Zhumu Ran narrowed his eyes, and his voice was ice cold as he looked at Jin Wendan. I have already reached an agreement with Mr. Luo Gong. Qin Shen and I will be married today. Chapter 723. What? 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 Why didn't she know about this? Could it be that something happened after she snuck out? Going back to an hour ago, Luo Qinshan had just left the Luo Manor when Zhumu Ran came. At this time, Yi Yongjun was discussing Luo Qinshan's marriage with Luo Gong. When Zhumu Ran came in, he became the center of attention. There was a sparkle in his eyes as he said to Luo Gong with a faint smile, "I think that there should be a better candidate for young Miss Luo's marriage." Zhumu Ran was wearing a camouflage military uniform, looking very handsome. Yi Yongjun, standing in front of him, was like a fake foreigner. No matter how expensive the suit was, it couldn't compare. Yi Yongjun cleared his throat and pretended to be calm. "Commander Zhu, are you trying to break up a couple? Does this mister think you're qualified to be a couple?" His voice was very cold, but his lips curled into a faint smile. "At most you're a duck. There was a report from the flower-gazing house, so I came to take a look." Zhumu ran through a jade pendant on the table and said in a cold voice, "There were two young misses fighting over a jade pendant left by a certain young master last night, and this jade pendant should be yours, right?" Yi Yongjun was surprised, but he immediately shook his head to deny it. "What jade pendant? It's not mine at all." "I don't understand," Zhumu Ran said with a soft laugh. "Could it be that you're not called Yi Yongjun?" There are many people called Yi Yongjun in a Ning city." Yi Yongjun shook his head. "It's not me." "No," Zhumu Ran said. "You're the only one called Yi Yongjun in a Ning city." Yi Yongjun's face turned red, clearly feeling a bit angry. Seeing that he couldn't refute it, he angrily said, "Damn your master." "Zhumu Ran, you're maliciously smearing me. You want to marry the Luo family's young Miss Luo Qinshan. I can only admit half of what you said." Zhumu Ran gave a chuckle. Hearing her name in his ears, a faint Li Guang appeared in his eyes. Yi Yongjun was not convinced and said, "Luo Qinshan and I were betrothed before we were born. Have you asked me if you want to marry Miss Luo? How dare you?" Luo Gong's expression turned ugly when he heard the words flower, gazing pavilion. No wonder Yi Yongjun smelled like a mixture of rouge and face powder when he walked in. It turned out that he had gone to a brothel. "Uncle Luo, you can't listen to his nonsense." Yi Yongjun pulled his bow tie and said, "I'm innocent. Whether or not you went to a brothel last night, do you think I, Luo Gong, wouldn't be able to find out?" Luo Gong's eyes were filled with anger, and he immediately ordered him to leave. "If there's nothing good, please leave. Do not step into the Luo residence in the future." Luo Gong believed that he had a good eye for people, so he had high hopes for Yi Yongjun. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. He had personally experienced this. Yi Yongjun wanted to say something, but he couldn't keep his face, so he could only leave. "Many thanks to Commander Zhua for using this special method to help my daughter find a bad guy," Luo Gong politely said. "It's been hard on you." Chapter 724. Zhumu Ran dared to guarantee that this was the bravest thing he had ever said in his life. He could feel his heart beating fiercely, and even his breathing became a bit fast. Actually, he didn't know that Luo Gong was even more shocked than him, because not long ago, he wanted to kill Zhu Qiyu, even if Zhumu Ran didn't know at first. After this matter was exposed, anyone who thought of this wouldn't have a good impression of the Luo family. He actually wanted to marry his daughter. "Commander Zhua, is this true?" Luo Gong slightly knit his brows. "You should know that the Luo family has." "I'm serious. I hope Uncle can help me." Zhumu Ran took a deep breath. "I can promise you that as long as I'm alive, I will protect her. I won't stop until I die." Luo Gong never thought that these words would come from Zhumu Ran's mouth. As a father who had put his daughter in danger again and again, his face looked a bit old at this moment. After a while, he gave a slight nod. "It's good that she's satisfied." These 5 simple words expressed the thoughts of many fathers. The scene changed back to the Zhuo Manor. Luo Qinshan looked at Zhumu Ran in a daze as she said, "Commander Zhu, do you know what you're saying?" "Unhumph." Zhumu Ran's dark eyes took a deep look at her. "Wasn't giving yourself to me a lie?" Luo Qinshan pursed her lips, looking at him with a smile that was hard to hide. In her eyes, Zhumu Ran was simply too handsome at this moment, all right? He had always been cold and aloof in the army, doing things decisively and indifferently. Most people had never seen this side of him, but he didn't seem to care. It was like as long as he was certain of something, he would continue without hesitation. Get married today? The blood on Jean Wendan's right hand dripped down drop by drop. Her lips trembled as she said, "Didn't the commander say that you wouldn't get married?" Once upon a time, she had confessed to him with the mentality of a little girl and had even prepared chocolate. But the response he got was, "I only care about my country in this life. I've never thought about love affairs." This man's words had now been overturned by himself. Moreover, it was because of someone he had only known for a few days. How could it be? At that time, I just hadn't met him yet. His tone was very calm, without the slightest hint of bullying. It was as if he didn't feel awkward at all when he recalled his conversation with Jean Wendan. But Jean Wendan slowly raised her trembling hand and said, "But she's not a good person." Standing in front of Zhumu Ran, she didn't dare say the word traitor. After all, those two words had been completely rejected by him. But she still had to say it. "I think my love for her has nothing to do with whether she's a good person or a bad person." Zhumu Ran slowly turned and took her hand. "She will only be my wife in the future, someone I will protect to the end." The group of soldiers who were originally dull cheered at this moment. Their young Marshal Mu was actually saying such straightforward words of love in public. It was really a rare sight in 100 years. Wendan, Su Jinliang's eyes flashed with pain. Blood was still dripping from her right hand, and her face was extremely pale. Chapter 725. As night slowly fell, there weren't many people in the Zhuo Manor. The soldiers came to train during the day, so there were less than 10 people in this large manor at night. After dinner, she sat on the swing in the backyard and looked at the stars in the sky, feeling a bit of happiness in her heart. Zhumu Ran came over from behind her and gave her a cup of hot chocolate. Is there a difference between the sky in a Ning city and the sky in a foreign school? Luo Qingshun took the hot chocolate and looked up. The stars in the Zhuo Manor are brighter. There was a warmth in his hand, and Zhumu Ran gently swung the swing for her. He said in a pampering voice, "Qingshun can look at the stars in the Zhuo Manor for a lifetime. AI, it's too dangerous." Luo Qingshun deliberately said, "People keep shooting at me. If it wasn't for me being strong, I would have died today, all right." To be honest, she wasn't complaining, all right? Jean Wendan had really shot at her 5 times. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't have the space and time freeze, how could she have dodged the bullets? After a while, he stopped swinging and squatted down in front of her. "Relax. She will never appear in my army again." Even if she didn't say anything about today's matters, he was still in shock. The 5 bullets had hit the wooden stake behind her. He didn't even dare think about what he would do if she was really shot in his manor. "Is this true?" Luo Qingshun said with a soft laugh. "Commander Zhua is so decisive." Luo Qingshun never thought that he would make this decision since Jean Wendan's marksmanship wasn't bad. Although there was a huge gap between her and him, he could still be considered a rare talent, even if her identity was still being investigated. Zhumu Ran raised his hands and took her hands in his. "Do you remember what I said in front of Kuchi? There were some things he could bet on, but there were some things he couldn't bet on." "All right." Luo Qingshun pursed her lips into a smile. "Anyway, my marksmanship is better than hers. You can just bring me with you when you go to the battlefield. In your dreams." He patted her head and rejected her without any hesitation before saying in a cold voice, "I'll send you back." Luo Qingshun gave a soft snort. "What in your dreams? Could it be that you think my marksmanship isn't as good as hers?" That kind of trash marksmanship was child's play in her eyes, all right? If she had a gun, it would have been Jean Wendan first. It definitely wouldn't have been her. "Silly girl." His voice was very soft, but it carried a touch of doting as he said, "I won't let you take the risk, so you don't want to go to the battlefield. Stay at home and set a date for you to become Mrs. Zhua." Luo Qingshun's hers heart when she heard this. Happiness seemed to have come so suddenly that before she could react, she was already surrounded by happiness. suddenly becoming Mrs. Zhuo really is a bit nervous. Luo Qingshun leaned her head against his hand and asked a question that she had always wanted to know. When you first met me, you didn't like me very much, did you? Ah, Zhumu Ran clearly didn't react for a while before saying, "Why are you asking this?" "No reason," she said. "I just know that you don't have a good impression of me, so I'm asking." Chapter 726. His eyes were very serious, as if he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Luo Qingshun suddenly understood that this kind of person was able to completely give himself to someone and break all taboos. For the person he loved, he was willing to lower himself to the ground. 7 days later, the wedding arrived. Because the Luo family and the Zhuo family were both large families, their wedding could be considered a sensation in a Ning city. Although the two of them were at the forefront of their generation, they still used traditional etiquette for their wedding. A large red sedan and a phoenix coronet. Luo Qingshun sat in the sedan, jolting up and down. Beside her was the noisy Xiao Yunyun, explaining how excited she was from beginning to end. Young Miss is actually marrying the commander's wife that all the girls in a Ning city want to marry. Xiao Yunyun's expression was a bit strange, and there were faint tears in her eyes as she said, "Xiao Yunyun is really happy for you. Why do you look like you're getting married?" Luo Qingshun gave a soft laugh, and the surrounding people gradually quieted down. She vigilantly asked, "Are we almost there?" "We're almost there, young miss." Xiao Yunyun took a deep breath and said, "Young miss can rest assured with me taking care of things." The Luo residence was not far from the Zhuo residence, and there were a few alleys in between, so she did not care too much. What she did not know was that after a while, the sedan continued to move. Xiao Yunyun was still chatting, but she felt that something was wrong. She knit her brows, and the moment she opened the curtain, a wave of asterisk came over. At the last moment, she looked at Xiao Yunyun's face filled with tears, and her eyes turned dark. In the next second, her world fell into darkness. As expected, the people that could make her relax her guard were the people she trusted. She still remembered that in the previous owner's world, this girl had risked her life to block Jean Wendan's bullet for her. But now, she had become Jean Wendan's helper. In a dark cage, she did not have any strength in her body, and her hands were bound by iron chains. He could vaguely see strange people locked up in cages around him. Their eyes were blood red. "Wow, I'm so excited." Baisho stood by Jean Wendan's side. He still had the braids of a Qing, but every movement of his made him look like a traitor. His lips curled into a dangerous smile as he said, "Give her a shot of the poison we developed from the Holocaust. It must be fun." Jean Wendan sneered and walked towards Luo Qingshun step by step. "You didn't expect this, did you? How does it feel to be betrayed by the person closest to you?" "So what? Zhumu Ran will definitely come save me." Luo Qingshun's voice was very soft, almost using all her strength to say this sentence. But the meaning of the words was so confident. "Shut up." Jean Wendan kicked the cage heavily. "If it wasn't for you, I would be the only woman by his side. You are not qualified to be his wife." "Oh, cough. Luo Qingshun sneered. "Do you think a traitor like you is qualified?" She did not guess wrongly. Jean Wendan was the real traitor. The previous owner actually didn't know. The previous owner was so stupid. Jean Wendan's eyes were swallowed by flames as she said through gritted teeth, "I had you beg for death." As soon as her voice fell, she said to Baisho beside her, "The Zhuo family and the Luo family cannot be underestimated. We must find young Miss Naizi to come up with a plan to attack the city." "Beautifully done." Baisho's lips curled as he said, "You really are young Miss Naizi's favorite. Congratulations on not falling for love." System: Can teleportation only be used in places without people? Chapter 727. Her eyelids were very heavy, and her ears were still echoing with the sound of the wedding ceremony. But now, she was locked in an iron prison, without any light. She frowned slightly, and opened her eyes forcefully, once again looking at her surroundings. This place seemed to be an underground secret room, and looking around, there were countless iron cages. Each iron cage seemed to hold only one person, and his whole body was naked, and his eyes were red. There were no manic sounds, only focused on one point, sitting quietly. No expression, no joy or anger. In the next second, her heart jumped, and she couldn't help but murmur, "Live experiment." Not long ago, she heard that when the Japanese invaders captured Sonway City, which was 100 miles away from Anning City, they captured a group of strong men. After that, they disappeared without a trace. So, it should be these people in front of her. Katja! The moment the door was opened, she slowly closed her eyes. This time, it was a Japanese professor who walked in, wearing a white coat, who seemed to be a doctor, and standing next to him was the so-called upright official Baisho. The experiment has entered the final stage, and of the more than 900 test subjects, only 50 or so survived. Baisho said in fluent Japanese, "But it doesn't matter, these 50 or so are all elites. What does Professor Kitagawa think?" But no, he stood with his hands behind his back and nodded. How was the final reaction of the blood poison experiment? Blood poison experiment? Luo Qingshun heard these 4 words and unconsciously sucked in a breath of cold air. Baisho and Kitagawa both thought that no one here could hear them, and even if they did, they would speak Japanese. They didn't pose a threat to them at all, so they became even more unscrupulous and cocky. With me, Kitagawa, there's nothing that can't be done. He glanced at the experiment report in his hand and said, "Although many test subjects died in the blood poison experiment, in the end, it was a success. Test subjects are test subjects in the end, in the eyes of the emperor. In this country, the lives of all the people are as worthless as ants, and it doesn't matter if 1 dies or 100 dies." When Baisho said this, he flung back the braid in front of his chest and didn't think that this sentence included him. "Ha!" Beichuan laughed. "I like honest and upright officials like you. You have foresight and brains. Then in the future, when this batch of breaking armor soldiers are dissolved, I hope that Professor Kitagawa can put in a good word for me in front of Sir Masao. I also want a breaking armor soldier who can protect me forever." As soon as his voice fell, 100 Life and Beichuan both burst into laughter. Beichuan patted him on the shoulder and said, "No problem." With the heavy sound of the door closing, Luo Qingshun felt her heart skip a beat. What were armor-piercing soldiers? What was hemolysis? His mind was filled with questions, but he couldn't find any answers. His consciousness gradually blurred. This iron prison seemed to have a very strange smell. After acting for too long, one would feel as if their nerves were drifting away, and they would feel powerless. At the same time, Ning City exploded. It was no laughing matter that Commander's bride had been kidnapped. The combined power of the Zhua and Luo families could be said to be invincible in Ning City. To be able to kidnap Luo Qingshun, it must be someone very close to her. Luo Gong's first thought was Xiao Yunyun, because after Luo Qingshun disappeared, she never appeared again. Chapter 728. Zhumu Ran hadn't slept for 3 days. He had searched all the possible hiding places in and out of the city. He just couldn't find a single trace of Luo Qingshun. "You should rest." Zuoqiyu couldn't help knitting his brows, as he was a bit worried about his little brother. After all, no one was made of iron. If this continued, before he could find Luo Qingshun, Commander's might already be dead. Pong! A hand tightly clenched into a fist and slammed down, causing a crack to appear on the mahogany table. "Her life or death is unknown. How am I qualified to rest?" Zhumu Ran's eyes were bloodshot as he gritted his teeth and said word for word, "Where is she? Where is she?" According to the last location of the sedan, he was close to death within 20 miles. "There's something I never told you." Zuoqiyu knit his brows. Jean Wendan is missing. She had been missing for 3 days, and no one knew where she went. Jean Wendan. Zhumu Ran knit his brows as he thought of how she had fired at Luo Qingshun in the Zhua manor. Those 5 bullets were enough to prove that she wanted Luo Qingshun's life. "Yes." Zuoqiyu gave a shrug and said with a sigh, "You've been running around like a headless fly these past few days. I could only help you investigate some small things." After all, Zuoqiyu is very grateful to Luo Qingshun for saving his life. Although he wasn't as crazy as his little brother, he was still doing his best to find her. Do you have any clues? Zhumu Ran took a deep breath and calmed down. He opened the 50-mile map of Ning City on the table. His deep eyes were dim, like he couldn't see the light of the stars in them. Jin Wendan's identity isn't too optimistic. Zhuqiyu paused before saying, to be honest, she should be someone from the Japanese. Zhuqiyu's eyes were stunned as they filled with disbelief. The sniper that had followed him for 6 years, the sniper that had killed countless Japanese, was actually a traitor? Are you certain? Although it's difficult, I have 80% confidence. Zhuqiyu analyzed seriously. She probably thought of abandoning the dark for the light because of you, but Qingchen's appearance might have pushed her to the other extreme. Everyone in the army knew that Jin Wendan's feelings for Zhumu Ran weren't normal, but everyone knew that Commander Zhu didn't approach women. She had never thought that he would be so determined to marry the daughter of the Luo family in such a short time. In the beginning, even his adjutant, Su Zhengliang, was not convinced because he loved Jin Wendan. But it was not easy for her to get to where she was now. She knew that every bullet she fired was to make that man pay more attention to her. But he was actually indifferent to her feelings. But when he knew that she and Luo Qingchen had disappeared at the same time, when he also guessed that she might be the mole, his heart fell to the bottom of the valley. Perhaps Zhumu Ran's eyes were that accurate. The person she loved must be a patriotic hero. Man, reporting to the young marshal, the 11th and 11th Divisions are all on standby. Please advise us. When the soldiers heard his voice, they all rushed in and lined up in order. Chapter 729. Surround the Jin Manor and bring back all the useful information of the Jin family. Zhumu Ran's dark eyes sunk as they filled with coldness. This was his first time using this method of exchanging hostages to confront the enemy. He didn't care about this before, but now that Luo Qingchen was in their hands, he had no other choice. Yes, Commander. 3 hours later, the Jin Manor was searched. The 11th Squad found all kinds of evidence of Jin Wendan betraying the country in her room. It turned out that the moment she entered Zhumu Ran's army 6 years ago, she had been a traitor. Her half-brother was half-Japanese, and that so-called half-mother was the commander of the large-scale Japanese invasion, young Miss Nizi. Jin Wendan's mother was raped when she was very young, and her father was framed and killed by an honest official at a very young age. She had a bone-deep hatred for the Qing that couldn't be eliminated no matter what. But when she met Zhumu Ran, the scales in her heart swayed. The man she liked was so outstanding and had such patriotism. Their bodies were filled with yellow-skinned blood, or she could be the only one standing by his side. But everything was just a possibility. Luo Qingchen's appearance let her know that Commander Zhua, who had always been calm and never talked about love, had changed. He didn't wear the green camouflage uniform every day when he wasn't fighting. He would wait for that girl to appear on a street corner. Under the sun, he was like a dazzling light. But Jin Wendan was very pure. That light didn't belong to her and would never belong to her. Then since she couldn't have it, she wouldn't let anyone else have it. Definitely not. Even if it meant betraying her soul. These are Jin Wendan's letters and some of her diaries. Su Zhengliang stood up straight and gave a salute. Reporting to the commander, I'm willing to go with the commander to capture the traitor. Send a message to the Japanese. Zhumu Ran's eyes turned cold. The 18 lives of the Jin Manor, I'll exchange it for Luo Qingchen. His dark eyes were bottomless, like there was a faint glow in them. When Jin Wenhen received the news from Zhumu Ran, she was shocked. The previous Zhumu Ran would never do something like this. He was that upright and had his principles. Today, he actually used the lives of his family of 18 people in exchange for Luo Qingchen. Sister, the woman you caught seems to be very important to Commander Zhua, Jeannie said with a cold laugh. She will become our trump card since Zhumu Ran can't move against the Jin family. No. Jin Wendan took a deep breath and shook her head. He will. The current Zhumu Ran was completely different from before. The roots of his obsession had already changed. In his eyes, no one in this world could stop him from saving Luo Qingchen. Are we going to send her back? Jean, he said unwillingly. It wasn't easy to find young Marshall's was weakness. Mom will be angry. I know that young Miss Nizi has always thought that Zwamu Ran is a cancer. Jean Windan narrowed her eyes with a sinister look as she said with a cold snort. But hasn't the blood experiment already succeeded? You want to? Chapter 730. Black Iron Prison. After being trapped for 3 days, Luo Qingshun couldn't open her eyes at all. Her mind was in chaos, and she didn't even have any consciousness of the system. The door to the prison was opened again, and Professor Kitagawa and Jean Windan came in. Go and see if she's taken enough poison, Jean Windan said to Kitagawa through the mask. Kitagawa came over and felt Luo Qingshun's pulse before opening her eyelids. Her breathing is very weak. She'll die in less than 10 hours. In another 5 hours, it will be the best time to inject the poison and dissolve the blood. Very good. Jean Windan's lips curled into a beautiful smile. Very soon, she will become my armor-breaking person and will only listen to my orders. Since young Miss Windan is planning on making her your armor-breaking person, then let's go back and take her blood. Kitagawa was clearly very excited. His face was red and his lips were curled the entire time. After all, this was the biggest project he had been working on in the past few years. If it wasn't for the Qing people being so weak, they wouldn't have been able to find that many test subjects and adjust the amount of poison. All right. Jean Windan narrowed her eyes as she looked at Luo Qingshun on the ground with a proud look in her eyes. There was no one in this world that could beat her. What Luo Manor's young miss? What sharpshooter? What Zwamu Rant's wife? No, she would be nothing soon. She would just be an armor-breaking person. Smelling her blood and hearing a certain sound, she would be an armor-breaking person that would go all out for her. No thoughts, no soul. She was just a living dead person that was like trash. She was lying in Professor Kitagawa's lab, but the moment the pillow was inserted into her blood vessel, she heard a thump as the cold syringe was inserted into her burning blood vessels, drawing out her boiling blood. That kind of stimulation, that kind of excitement. Kitagawa finished collecting her blood and took out the blue glass tube that he had already prepared. He said with 2 laughs, "When young Miss Nizi sees you like this, she will definitely be very excited." A few days ago, all the core members of the Great Sun Dojo said that Mr. Jinha's half-sister was troubled by love and wanted to rebel against the Japanese. When this was said, young Miss Nizi took away all her power. But now, it seemed that the rumors were just rumors. After 3 hours, the amount of hemolysis was finished and Jean Windan personally wrote a letter to Zwamu Ran. The tone of the letter was sincere and emotional. She had to let Zwamu Ran see that Luo Qingshun was her armor-breaking person. He saw her strip off her clothes and watched her do something unbearable in front of all the men. Listening to her orders for the rest of his life. Wasn't it interesting just to think about it? When Zwamu Ran received the letter, his eyes turned cold. Zwachi looked up at him and said, "What do you mean?" She agreed. Zwamu Ran knit his brows and said, "She said that she believed me and wanted me to personally take away Luo Qingshun. She said that this was her last gift to me, and that we would be enemies from now on." Zwachi frowned in disbelief. She really said that? You don't need us to bring hostages to the exchange? Anyone who saw Jean Windan's diary would know that her hatred for Luo Qingshun had reached a limit. How could she let Zwamu Ran take away Luo Qingshun so easily? It really was a bit strange. Chapter 731. The map that Jean Windan gave him was under the ruins 5 miles away from Ning City. Zwamu Ran closed his eyes with a bit of regret. He should have been so desperate that he could have saved her earlier. Now that it had been this long, his heart was filled with panic and fear. He didn't know how Jean Windan would treat her. He just knew that it wouldn't be good. He said that he would protect her, but he went back on his words. He worked so hard, but he still went back on his words. Zwamu Ran took a deep breath and found the hidden switch to open the stairs. A long black staircase appeared in front of him. He didn't bring anyone. Jean Windan had said in the letter that she didn't want him to bring anyone. He didn't even need a hostage. At the same time, Zwachiyu hiding in the dark knit his brows. Su Zhengliang on the side said, Are we going against the commander's orders like this? We have to go against orders. Suichi looked at the 111 soldiers behind him and said with a sigh, he hasn't eaten anything in the past few days and hasn't slept at all. Perhaps I could be assured with the previous Zhuangmu Ran, but I can't be assured with the current Zhuangmu Ran. He had never seen Zhuangmu Ran like this. He had lost all the demeanor of a soldier. In the dead of the night, he would sit on the swing of the Zhuang Manor and shout over and over again. It was like he could hear the endless despair in his hoarse voice. It was like he had entered a domain of darkness where he couldn't even see his fingers. There was no light anywhere, and every path was a dead end. If it wasn't for finding Jin Wendan's identity and obtaining the chips, perhaps before they found Luo Qingshun, Zhuangmu Ran wouldn't have lived for more than a few days. Yes, Su Zhengliang lowered his head in regret. I will definitely protect the commander with my life. He had argued with Zhuangmu Ran for Jin Wendan before, but now he was helping a traitor. He had actually fallen in love with a traitor. How unbelievable. But now that he had turned back, he was still commander's proudest adjutant, always following him. He would destroy all the Japanese and contribute his meager strength to the future of the people. Even his life was just a feather. On the other side, Zhuangmu Ran raised his gun as he walked step by step towards the control room. With every step he took, he felt that the smell in the air had become particularly foul, until he saw Jin Wendan, who was waiting for him. There was also a large group of bearded Japanese, one of whom he was very familiar with. Apart from Miss Quasi, the commander of the regional invasion, Jin, he was the second in command. This person had fought with them many times in the past. His strength was extremely strong, and he was definitely not someone to be trifled with. Commander Zhua, Jin Wendan gave him a military salute with extreme mockery. Number 7952 Jin Wendan, please advise me. He was just looking. When she opened her mouth to say these words again, he looked at her. Would there be a bit of reluctance in his eyes? Would he miss the time when they fought side by side in the past? However, she didn't expect that his eyes were dim from start to finish. The next second, his voice was absolutely cold as he said, "You don't have the right." Jin Wendan's body trembled, and she even staggered back a small step at this moment. His tone was as if he was talking to an enemy. Did he remember that on the battlefield, her extremely accurate sniping skills had helped him eliminate so many enemies? Did he remember that she had saved his life more than once? Chapter 732. You're not qualified to speak to my little sister like this. Genie immediately pointed his gun at Zhuangmu Ran, as if he wanted his head to explode. You're broken Chinese, don't say it. Zhuangmu Ran's cold eyes narrowed as his lips curled into a smile without any warmth. You're not qualified to speak Chinese. Zhuangmu Ran. In the next second, he loaded his gun, and his eyes were filled with anger. Big brother. Jin Wendan's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately lowered her gun as she roared. You said that you'd listen to me today. He angrily bit his lip and revealed a middle finger as he cursed in Japanese. They deserve to be blown up by us, ha 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 ha. Zhuangmu Ran, whether I'm qualified or not, since you're here today, you have to listen to me. Jin Wendan had a fierce look in her eyes as she said, otherwise, you won't be able to go back. Her words were a bit tactful, like she was reminding Zhuangmu Ran not to anger Jin He. After all, he was her big brother. If he really angered him, she might not even be able to protect Zhuangmu Ran. In her heart, even if they were on opposite sides, she didn't want him to die. At least he had to live. It doesn't matter if I go back or not. Zhuangmu Ran narrowed his cold eyes as he looked at Jin Wendan with bloodshot eyes. You said to let her go. You have to keep your word, otherwise what? Jin Wendan's eyes were filled with rage. The man in front of her kept mentioning that woman in front of her. Was it really that important? Could it be that in his heart, that Luo Qingshun was more important than his own life? Otherwise, I will have everyone in the Jin family buried with her. Zhuangmu Ran's eyes suddenly turned cold, completely different from the righteous commander from before. He tightly bit his lip as he looked at her and said word for word, from an 80-year-old woman to a 3.5-year-old child. If you kill her, I will definitely keep my word. Jin Wendan felt all the hairs on her body stand up. If she didn't hear it, she wouldn't have heard it. She had never thought that Commander Zwa, who was full of a sense of justice and always put the old, the weak, women, and children first, would say such a thing. It turned out that everyone had a bottom line. Never touch the person most important to them, or they would do something even crazier than you could imagine. All right, I got it. Jean Wendan's eyes narrowed. Her heart was like a ball of fire that could not be extinguished. Faint tears flashed in her eyes as she said, I'll take you to see her. Along the long corridor, he walked step by step towards the black iron door. Jean Wendan's heart was suddenly a little flustered at this moment. Her jealousy had indeed overshadowed all other emotions. But the words that Zwamu Ran said to her kept appearing in her mind, and each word slammed into her heart. If she really did that to Luo Qingshun, what would Zwamu Ran do? To die with Luo Qingshun, or kill him and everyone else here? But she knew that this was their territory, and Zwamu Ran couldn't do anything. But why did her heart feel so unsettled? It was like the person behind her was a demon covered in blood, not fearing pain or death. There was only one belief in his heart. Chapter 733. Kacha. The iron door was open again, but this heavy sound sounded very soft in Luo Qingshun's ears. Her heart was beating very slowly, and she felt that she was about to return to the chaos space. The system's voice clearly sounded in her mind. The male lead is here. Zwamu Ran? He was here to save her? This seemed to be her first time being this weak in front of him. He should have seen her as a tough girl before. Marksmanship, whether it was Itoda or Kuchi, they were all beautiful. She suddenly wasn't willing to let him see her in such a sorry state. But she didn't even have the strength to open her eyes. If it wasn't for the 50 pairs of red eyes staring at her every day, she would have already teleported away. All right? When Zwamu Ran stepped into the cell, his eyes fell onto Luo Qingshun. She didn't have any scars on her, proving that she hadn't been whipped. But she didn't react to the heavy sound of the door opening at all, which meant that her situation wasn't good. What did you do to her? Zwamu Ran knit his brows, clearly feeling that something was wrong with the air around him. Jean Wendan raised her hand to say to the people behind her, Close the poison vents first. Yes. The bearded Japanese responded and left the room. Zwamu Ran heard this, and a fierce look appeared in his eyes. He walked past Jean Wendan and headed in Luo Qingshun's direction. But he didn't know that Jean Wendan would take out her gun and point it at the back of his head. Did I let you save her? She reached out, and all the Japanese raised their guns, pointing them at him. Does it matter if you let me or not? Zwamu Ran's eyes turned cold. He didn't hesitate to walk in Luo Qingshun's direction. The Japanese standing behind Jean Wendan looked at each other, and when they were about to fire a warning shot, she said, Don't shoot. She changed from Chinese to Japanese and said to them, Grab Commander Zwa and then insert this needle into Luo Qingshun's body. You must let young Marshal Zwa see it with his own eyes from the nearest distance. Do you understand? Yes. The 20 or so Japanese behind him nodded in unison. She didn't believe that with all these people behind her, she couldn't catch a single Zwamu Ran. He wanted her to see with her own eyes that the woman he loved had become so filthy that she was neither human nor ghost. As long as she thought of this, her heart, which was about to die, would burn again. Lying on the ground, she could vaguely hear a familiar set of footsteps approaching her. She tried her best to move her fingertips. In the next second, she was firmly held by a pair of warm and big hands. Zwamu Ran didn't have a key. He could only tightly hold her hand through the iron gate. She was still wearing her red wedding dress and had a unique aura. It was slightly cold. As long as he took another look at her, he would feel his heart skip a beat. It was an unbearable pain. I'm here. I said that I would protect you. Zwamu Ran's voice was a bit choked up as he looked at her pale as snow face. I definitely will. The next second, he slowly got up, pulled out the gun at his waist, and fired at the lock without hesitation. Chapter 734. At the same time, Zwachiyu finally received the support of the commander and had absolute support to enter the secret underground room built by the Japanese. Bang! Bang! 2 bullets accurately hit the Japanese sentinel's heart, and the group of people slowly walked down the stairs. When they came down the stairs, they kept moving faster and faster. He kept saying in his heart, "Wait for me, wait for me, wait for me." Zhumu ran, "Wait for me." At this time, Zhumu ran in the secret room, looked at the weak, breathing Luo Qingshun in his embrace, and his eyes were filled with pain. He slowly picked up Luo Qingshun and looked at Jin Wendan with a determined look. "I will definitely take her away today. If you want to stop me, kill me first." He came here with the conviction that he would die. Although he wasn't willing to let her die with him, he had no other choice. At least he could be by her side. At least she wouldn't be locked up in a dark dungeon alone. That was what he thought. If they died together, he had to kiss her seriously before he died. Then he would pray to the heavens for the next life. Thinking of this, he lowered his head and without any hesitation, he kissed her. In front of Jin Wendan, in front of all the Japanese, he desperately kissed the girl in his embrace. Over and over again, gently and forcefully. Jin Wendan never thought that Zhumu Ran would do this in front of all these people. Why? Why did she have to see him kissing someone so gently and looking at someone so lovingly? No, no, definitely not. All of you charge, she roared out in a hysterical voice. I won't let you take her away. I will let you see how disgusting she is. Hi. More than 20 Japanese soldiers rushed forward as if they had gone mad. Zhumu Ran turned with Luo Qingshun in his arms and quickly kicked 2 of them to the ground. His movements were smooth, and he didn't stop at all. Everyone looked at each other for a while, then rushed toward him without a care for anything else. He pursed his lips and resisted with all his might. But he couldn't fight them all. He reached out and was kicked. So in order to protect the girl in his embrace, he could only softly put her on the ground and kneel down beside her to stop the others from approaching her. Jin Wendan saw this and looked at the black-clothed person behind her move. She naturally knew that Zhumu Ran was skilled. Perhaps he could escape in front of all these people, but he had to protect an unconscious person in front of all these people. That was impossible. The strongest person in this world couldn't do this because everyone only had 2 hands. The black-clothed person's left hand. He deliberately used his left hand to attack Zhumu Ran. In the next moment, a pillow fell out of his right sleeve. After the protective cover fell off, it fell right into Luo Qingshun's body. He knew that even if Zhumu Ran reacted fast, it was impossible for him to move Luo Qingshun. This needle would definitely stab her. But he didn't know that he would place his right hand on her without any hesitation. See, a needle mixed with Jin Wendan's blood and the poison from the country's experiments pierced the back of Zhumu Ran's hand. His blood vessels turned dark red in an instant, and the venom quickly spread from his neck. Chapter 735. In less than 3 seconds, Zhumu Ran's eyes were bloodshot and filled with killing intent. The red might was like a blooming red peony. Jin Wendan called out in surprise. There was a bit of worry in her eyes, but there was more excitement. She always wanted Luo Qingshun to become her armor-breaking soldier, but she never wanted Zhumu Ran to become her armor-breaking soldier. If it was Zhumu Ran, wouldn't she be able to have him and be with him forever? When she was thinking of this, the iron door was opened again, and Zhuqi Yu charged in with the 11th squad. Zhumu Ran already felt the scene in his mind becoming blurry. It was hard for him to focus, and even his breathing became fast. Commanders Zhumu Ran. Zhumu Ran looked at his right hand that had been pierced by a needle, and dark blood dripped down drop by drop. He then looked at Luo Qingshun lying on the ground with her eyes closed. His heart thumped, and he felt like he was going to die. He knew that he had been poisoned, but he didn't know what kind of poison it was. He just knew that his mind was filled with layers of Jin Wendan's face. Take Qingshun away. These were the last words he said before he lost consciousness. Luo Qingshun seemed to have heard these words in a chaotic world, and it was very, very forceful. It was like she was gritting her teeth and bleeding as she desperately said it. Pung, pung, pung. The entire dungeon fell into chaos. In the end, Jin Wendan opened the secret passage and released all the armor-breaking soldiers from the cages. Although they hadn't undergone the blood condensation test, they were all qualified armor-breaking soldiers and would listen to special orders. Zhumu Ran was the most special among them. In the future, He would only follow the scent of Jean Wan Dan's blood and would only listen to her orders. And all of this was what Luo Qingshan heard when she woke up in bed. Reporting to Captain Zhua, the dungeon has been searched and we haven't found Commander Zhua's voice. The 11th squad is still searching the secret passage. One of the sentries came in to report. Yes. Zhuqiyu furrowed his brows tightly. Have you figured out the poison in Commander Zhua's body? According to the data provided by the Research Institute, the composition of the air in the dungeon should be anesthetic. It's a type of chronic poison that numbs a person's nerves, making them drowsy and hallucinating. As for Commander Zhua, the man seemed to be trembling and paused when he said this. Zhuqiyu's eyes froze. Speak. Yes, Captain. The sentinel continued. We captured a red-eyed, unconscious man. From the beginning to the end, he only said 3 words, armor-piercing man. Based on his DNA, the Research Institute discovered that his blood was mixed with a type of poison, producing an immeasurable amount of virus. His brain was severely damaged. Do you mean that Commander Zhua was also poisoned? Zhuqiyu angrily knocked on the pillar with both hands and said, the Japanese actually conducted such a heartless virus experiment. I think what we should be worried about is... Luo Qingshan slowly stood up. Her face was pale, but her eyes were clear and resolute. Chapter 736. You're finally awake. How do you feel? Zhuqiyu came to her side. He had come to see her, but he never thought that the sentries would suddenly report this. Luo Qingshan waved her hand and knit her brows. It's nothing serious. The poison in your body isn't light. You should rest well for the next few days. Zhuqiyu slightly knit his brows. Although you haven't married yet, you're considered half a member of the Zhua family. Now that Mu Ran isn't here, I think there's no need to be polite. Luo Qingshan pursed her lips and said, if my guesses aren't wrong, the Japanese should have set up camp in Ning City, right? How could young Miss Nizi miss such a good chance? After a while, Zhuqiyu said with a sigh, yes, I've heard him say this before. Luo Qingshan seemed to recall something as her eyes turned red, but she still calmly said, and Ning City is easy to defend and hard to attack, right? Right? Because of the terrain, it's easy for them to be bombed by our bullets if they approach. Zhuqiyu said with a helpless smile, it's a good thing this is an era of firearms, otherwise it really would be hard to defend. Cuckoo. She let out a long sigh and supported herself with her hands. Let me see a 10-mile map of a Ning City. There's one in the study. Muran kept looking at it when he was looking for you. Zhuqiyu looked at her with a complicated look in his eyes. When she entered Zhua Muran's study for the first time, there was a faint sandalwood scent in the air that refreshed her mind. The study was very neat, and everything was placed in a certain pattern. Her lips curled slightly, as if she could feel Zhua Muran's clean and righteous appearance just by looking at this room. But when she stood in front of the map, her nose became stuffy and she almost cried. The map was densely packed with the marks he had made. He had circled every possible hiding place. She softly stroked the words that had caved in, as if she could feel how anxious he was when she closed her eyes. There were wet marks on the bottom right corner of the map that had dried up. Did he cry while looking at the map? She suddenly felt a wave of sadness in her heart, but she knew that she could not be weak at this time. This was a small city that Zhua Muran used his youth and sweat to protect. Now that he wasn't here, she had to protect it for him. After roughly studying a few breakthroughs, she received news from Zhuqiu's sentinel. Miss Nizi had already issued a letter of challenge to attack the city at noon tomorrow. This was a provocation from the Japanese. They were filled with mockery and looked down on them. At night, the moon and stars in the sky illuminated Zhua Muran's study. Luo Qingshan looked at Zhuqiu's analysis of both sides' fighting strength and unconsciously frowned. What are our chances of successfully defending the city? Zhuqiu glanced at the focused Luo Qingshan and asked tentatively. For some reason, in Zhuqiu's eyes, she was a woman. But she killed Hitoda and Kuchi so decisively, which is enough to prove that her ability is stronger than many people in the army. Luo Qingshan thought for a moment and said, 80%. The high? Zhuqiu was clearly in disbelief. Luo Qingqian's lips curled slightly as she said, "We can cut off their water source." Chapter 737. What do we need to do? There was a sparkle in Zhuo Qiyu's eyes as he looked at Luo Qingqian. Luo Qingqian pointed at the river before finally stopping at the courtyard of the Zhuo Manor. "Our well is connected to this river, so we can freeze this river." System, I saw something called instant freeze powder in the shop last time, right? Yes. 500 exchange points. On exchange. Ding, 500 exchange points has been taken. Successfully exchanged for a pack of instant freeze powder. She took out a pack of fine powder from her right pocket and looked at Zhuo Qiyu. "Pour this into the well, and it will quickly freeze." God! Zhuo Qiyu took the powder in disbelief as he looked at her. "It's this amazing. If we used the chemistry we learned in school, we wouldn't need to use this." Luo Qingqian thought for a bit before saying, "But we don't have much time now, so let's take a shortcut." Luo Qingqian didn't forget to tell him to bring more water, just in case we don't have enough. Zhuo Qiyu shook his head in a relaxed manner. "Don't worry about that. Our wells are connected to the river behind us. They have to attack us to cross it." Luo Qingqian gave a slight nod. She went around the study and headed to Zhuo Mu Ran's room. When she opened the door, she saw a piece of red silk hanging high up in front of her. There were red candles on the table, and the circles on them made one's heart skip a beat. If nothing unexpected happened that night, he should have held her hand and brought her to this room, letting her become the real commander's wife. Luo Qingqian closed her eyes and picked up the torch on the table to light the candle. Zhuo Mu Ran's room was Chinese style. There wasn't much Western culture. The wooden bed seemed to have a scent on it. She laid on the bed and closed her eyes, but her heart was filled with panic. There's probably no one in this world who could understand her fear. If he really became an armor-breaking soldier like Zhuo Qiyu said, what choice should she make when fighting? But she knew very well that no matter what, she could not shoot him, whether he was Zhuo Mu Ran or the armor-breaking man. The next morning, Luo Qingqian made the final military decisions. The terrain is our advantage. It's their advantage in numbers. She looked at Zhuo Qiyu and said, "But they can't afford to waste it. The first burst of energy, the second will weaken, and the third will be exhausted." Reporting, number 7441 Chun Rue reporting, "The enemy has entered our line of sight. Please instruct, set up the initial plan." Zhuo Qiyu said, "Let's go and take a look." Standing on top of the city gate, Luo Qingqian felt like she was at the border between the ancient and modern times. The Republic of China, a country that had existed for decades, had created and sacrificed countless talents. At that time, the hot-blooded youth did not hesitate to use his body to block the cannon, and did not hesitate to let countless bullets pass through his body. All they wanted was the safety of their motherland. Orderly footsteps were heard over and over again. Luo Qingqian picked up the binoculars beside her and saw the figures of a group of soldiers in front of her. They were all wearing dark red armor, and their eyes were blood red. They were like controlled robots, walking towards them step by step. Reporting, Captain, should we fire? Chapter 738. Young Miss Nizi really was ruthless. She used the strong men she captured from other cities as test subjects, turning them into armor-breaking soldiers. Like this, when they attacked the cities, they just needed to put the armor-breaking soldiers in the front. As long as they hesitated a bit, she could enter the range of the bombs. "Have you seen Zhuo Mu Ran?" Zhuo Qiyu's voice was very anxious, as crystal-like beads of sweat appeared on his forehead, because they were about to reach the border. If they crossed this line, their chances of attacking would increase. "I haven't," Luo Qingqian said in a deep voice, "but they're all Chinese. Can we shoot?" "Qingqian." Zhuo Qiyu closed his eyes and said, "If we don't shoot, if the city is broken, there will be more armor-breaking soldiers. You should be clear on the analysis of benefits." "I know." Luo Qingqian raised the M99 semi-automatic sniper rifle in her hand and said, "I'll go down and take a look." "Just you?" Zhuo Qiyu decisively shook his head and said, "No." "Then you'll go?" Her eyes were very serious as she said word for word, "I can minimize the casualties as much as possible." There were close to 50 armor-breaking soldiers. They were all flesh and blood compatriots. If they used long-range bombs, it would only cause their morale to plummet. After all, not a single Japanese died. The ones who died were all Chinese. After that, the 11 soldiers behind her looked at each other in blank dismay before saying in unison, reporting, "The 11 soldiers are willing to go." Luo Qingshun narrowed her eyes and looked at the soldiers behind her. Their eyes reddened. Their yellow skin had turned dark under the sun and wind. Their lips were dry and cracked, but their words were incomparably clear. They were soldiers, flesh and blood soldiers. "Look, there's a man wearing a Japanese samurai uniform at the border." Luo Qingshun looked in the direction of the voice. She picked up the bullet in her hand and walked down the city gates with the sniper rifle on her back. "Don't come over." Her eyes turned cold as she warned the Japanese man in front of her in Japanese. The man didn't seem to care as he shrugged his shoulders with a piece of paper in his hand. He said in broken Chinese, "Miss Nai Zi has pitted you. The Emperor has pitted you. This is an unconditional surrender. If you agree, then open the city gates." "Ha ha!" Luo Qingshun snorted coldly, as the corners of his mouth curled up in a mocking smile. "If your devil kingdom surrenders to us unconditionally, we can reluctantly accept it. After all, our country is magnanimous and won't bother with the Japanese." At this moment, she was standing here. Not only did she represent the powerful Luo family in a Ning city, it represented Zhuamu Ran's conviction. He was a righteous soldier. He absolutely would not allow such a thing to happen. "You?" The Japanese man's face turned red, and he started to curse in Japanese. The last sentence was translated into Chinese. "Our emperor will definitely bring evil upon you brainless ants." Zhuaqiyu, who was standing on the platform, clenched his fists tightly. Beside him, Su Zhongliang said angrily in a low voice, "Captain, he's insulting us." Yes, the appearance of this Japanese man was not to make peace. Instead, it was an extreme insult. In that case, in the next second, Luo Qingshun coldly snorted. She placed the sniper rifle on the sand dune at the border. Her eyes were cold as she said, "Since you're here, there's no need to go back." Chapter 739. Hearing a blood-curdling scream, the man's eyes were filled with disbelief. She actually dared to shoot him. Who was it that gave her such courage? But perhaps he could only ask Hell's King Yama. Not far away, the armor-breaking soldiers who had been moving forward saw this and stopped. Luo Qingshun naturally knew that someone had given them an order. And in the next second, this person appeared in front of her sniper rifle scope. Jin Wendan. But the person who attracted her gaze was not her, but the man standing next to her, wearing a Japanese samurai uniform. His silhouette was as perfect as when they first met. His rare pair of dark red eyes flashed with a sharp light. Just by standing there casually, he gave off a noble aura, as if he was a king who had descended upon the world, proudly looking down on the tens of thousands of kilometers of territory and its millions of people. Clap, 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 clap. Jin Wendan clapped and said with a smile, "Truly an inspiring battle." They were still some distance away from the border. Luo Qingshun could only barely hear Jin Wendan's words, but her heart flashed with a touch of panic. Standing not far in front of her, the man wearing a Japanese samurai uniform was so moving. "Young commander, you're not allowed to go." Luo Qingshun stretched out her hand to stop one of the soldiers from the 111 SD division who was about to go forward and said, "Right now, he is no longer your young commander. He was an armor-breaking soldier whose brain was invaded by the virus." "Ha ha!" Jin Wendan sneered and said, "I'll let you see how bloodthirsty and terrifying our armor-breaking army is." Oh, a loud horn sounded, and all the armor-breaking soldiers who were standing in place seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They picked up their guns and fired while walking towards them. "Get down." Luo Qingshun and Zhuaqiyu opened their mouths at the same time and said these two words. Pung, 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 pung. A rain of bullets instantly sounded in their ears. Luo Qingshun's heart seemed to beat with the sound of the gunshots. She counted the speed of the bullets in her heart, and when she counted to 1, she raised the flag in her hand. Zhuqiyu saw this and roared out, "All rearguard troops, cover Luo Qingchen." Luo Qingchen's cold eyes narrowed as she pulled the trigger of the M99 semi-automatic sniper rifle. Every bullet hit 3 inches below the arm bone of the armor-piercing man. The smell of blood filled the air, and her hands couldn't help sweating with each shot. She did all this just to save more people's lives. Otherwise, it would be much easier for her to get shot in the heart. But she knew that if he was here, he would have made the same choice as her. Not bad, not bad. Jean Wendan raised a brow as she revealed a sinister smile. She roared from not far away, "Luo Qingchen, so what if your spear skills are good? I've prepared a large gift for you. Do you like it?" She took out a knife from her chest and cut her finger, smearing the blood on her lips. She said as Wenmu ran beside her, "Go, kill them all. They won't shoot you. Go, you are the pride of our emperor." After that, Zhumu Ran's eyes turned red, and his dark red eyes gradually turned bright red. The veins in his blood vessels popped out one by one. Chapter 740. Most of the 50 armor-breaking soldiers had been taken care of by her. The remaining few hadn't been completely corroded by the poison, so their movements were a bit slower. Luo Qingchen narrowed her eyes and muttered, "It seems like this thing hasn't been completely researched yet." But at this moment, Zhumu Ran was already walking in their direction. Every step he took was a heavy blow to Luo Qingchen's heart. She never thought that there would be a day when they would be fighting on the battlefield, and the one standing behind her was his most trusted personal guard. Commander's was 111 soldiers were all brave soldiers. No matter what the situation was, they never backed down. "I don't believe that Commander Zhuo will change." One of the soldiers stood up and said, "He was forced to eat crow meat, but he was never addicted to it. He has willpower that normal people don't have. He is my hero." As soon as his voice fell, he put down his gun. He went over the sand dune and walked up to Zhumu Ran. He shouted while walking, "Number 0001 Wang Liang, 1 heart for the 1st and 11th Army." Luo Qingchen gritted her teeth as her eyes misted over. This scene actually moved a person like her. Just a few words filled a person's blood with the power of a warrior. But after that, pong! Zhumu Ran raised his gun and shot Wang Liang's thigh without any hesitation. Wang Liang fell to the ground and crawled up with gritted teeth as he kept saying, "Number 0001. Wang Liang, 1 heart for the 1st and 11th Army." Bang! Another gunshot rang out, this time hitting him in the back. Luo Qingchen tightly knit her brows as she looked at Zhumu Ran through the scope. "Don't shoot. Don't listen to her. Keep killing." Jean Wendan's voice came from behind him, like a terrifying curse that swallowed him every second. "Kill, kill, kill." Zhumu Ran kept repeating these 3 words as his eyes had no focus. It was like as long as someone approached him, he would pull the trigger without any hesitation. "Wang Liang, no, I don't believe it." Another person behind Luo Qingchen stood up and charged forward while shouting, "Number 0005 Zhang Jin, 1 heart for the 1st and 11th Army." Number 0005 Zhang Jin, 1 heart for the 1st and 11th Army. He kept saying this over and over until Zhumu Ran's gun hit his knee. The following scenes were the first time in Luo Qingchen's life, even in all these worlds, that her blood had boiled like this. Her heart, as if it was about to explode. Every soldier of Zhumu Ran's 11th Squad put down their guns and charged at him without caring about anything else. Number 0004 Wu Bai, 1 heart for the 1st and 11th Army. Number 0011 Xiao E for the 1st and 11th Army. Even if their bodies, their commanders, this was their era. This was their belief. Tease, says without him, there wouldn't be them. When all the soldiers fell, when Luo Qingchen finished taking care of the breaking armor army, the dirt flew by and the youth in front of the sand had no expression, as his eyes were filled with blood-red, killing intent. Luo Qingchen took a deep breath and slowly stood up. "Qingchen, don't." Zhuqiyu's shout came from the city gates. Chapter 741. She could see a trace of despair in his eyes. He slowly raised his hand, and the gun was aimed right at her heart. It wasn't any other place, it was her heart. Right, that's it. It's aimed right at her heart. Then with a pung, Jean Wendan's smile became even wider. It was like a flower in the darkness of the rainforest, blooming in an instant. Luo Chun gave a shrug. She threw the gun to the ground with a dong sound and slowly moved towards him step by step. She seemed to be able to feel his slight trembling. Because of her reflection in his lifeless eyes, there was a trace of clarity. Dear, kill her, and you will be the greatest hero in my heart. Jean Wendan's delicate voice came from behind Zhumu Ran. It had a bloody smell that made people's stomachs churn. The amount of blood condensed was indeed strong. You can't kill me. Luo Qingshun looked up. There was a bit of snow falling from the sky, bringing with it a chill. She took a deep breath, and a faint mist appeared in her eyes as she looked at Zhumu Ran. Because I'm the one you love the most. She could feel Zhumu Ran's body tremble. His hand holding the gun began to tremble even more, and his expressionless face actually knit his brows. Jean Wendan behind him bit her lip and took out the knife from her chest. She slid it down her arm before sucking in a deep breath. Her mouth was filled with blood as she gave the order to Zhumu Ran, "Shoot, shoot, shoot." Zhumu Ran heard this, and the blood-red color in his eyes instantly filled them. He was like a bloodthirsty zombie, with eyes filled with killing intent. After that, pong, a bullet brushed past her shoulder and hit the sand dune behind her. Luo Qingshun gave a snort as blood dripped down from her arm. Her lips curled as she said, "You said that you would protect me no matter when or where. Until you die. You won't stop." She didn't know how to wake him up, but she knew that it was impossible for her to shoot him. Whether Zhumu Ran died here or broke through the door, she probably wouldn't be able to see it. She could feel the trembling in his eyes. She knew that he was also working very hard to break through the darkness. She knew that only she could help him. "What right do you have to let him protect you?" Jean Wendan roared. The Japanese behind her seemed to feel her effort and also declared war. She refused to accept this. She had clearly mixed her blood with poison and injected it into Zhumu Ran's body. She had clearly hypnotized him. But why did Zhumu Ran look so hesitant? His shots didn't hit their vitals. When he faced Luo Qingshun, he was even more hesitant. He was her exclusive armor-piercing soldier. He would only listen to her orders for the rest of his life. No one could replace him. Luo Qingshun sneered, with a touch of disdain in her eyes. "Because he likes me, because he is my fiancé, and because we are truly in love. No matter how many despicable methods you use, you won't be able to interfere. Do you understand?" Jean Wendan. Luo Qingshun gave a cold laugh before continuing. "You were by his side for an entire 6 years, and he didn't fall in love with you. I met him for an entire 6 days, and he married me in a red sedan. Do you know how big the difference is?" Chapter 742. "No!" Jean Wendan roared out as she made another large cut on her arm. She didn't care about her life as she sucked the blood while shouting at Zhumu Ran. "Kill her. You are my armor-breaking soldier. You have to listen to my orders. Little sister, don't be impulsive." Jean he came out of the tank and stood beside her. "We don't need that armor-breaking soldier. We'll charge in. These ants aren't our match. Big brother, I want to prove myself." Jean Wendan's eyes were bloodshot as she looked forward. "I want to see him personally kill Luo Qingshun. What does a bit of blood count for?" Zhumu Ran suddenly trembled. His brows knit even tighter as he raised his gun again. It was snowing heavily in the sky. Snowflakes fell one by one, landing on her long eyelashes and her camouflage uniform. Pum! There was another gunshot, and the bullet brushed past her neck, causing blood to flow out. Zhuqiyu, standing on the wall, felt his heart jump into his throat. He gritted his teeth as he gave the order, "Snipers prepare. If commanders will fires again, suppress him." He had no other choice. If Zhumu Ran could even kill Luo Qingshun, then he would become the biggest trump card to take down in Ning City, because he was clear on his abilities as his big brother. If he became a puppet of the Japanese, there would be no end to his troubles. Beautifully done. Jean Wendan's face was a bit pale, but she couldn't hide the smile on her face. As her armor-breaking soldier, he had already fired 2 shots at Luo Qingshun. Although he didn't hit her vitals, This was enough to prove that the hemolytic virus was very successful. If they didn't capture so many captives as test subjects, they wouldn't have the chance to study this heaven-defying poison. My armor-breaking soldier, Jean Wendan said with a charming smile. You should be aiming at the heart this time. She opened her kimono and slashed her thigh with her dagger. Go. You only belong to me. Zumu ran. Luo Qingshun closed her eyes as the blood dripped onto the white snow, but her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, Do you remember when I blocked 2 bullets for you when we first met? But I know that you didn't fall in love with me then. Her voice was a bit soft, but she knew that Zhumu Ran could hear it. His movement of raising the gun was somewhat sluggish, but his body seemed to be out of control. When you fell in love with me, it was in Kuchi's mansion, right? She raised her eyes and looked at the snow in the sky. She wanted to hold back her tears, but they still fell unconsciously. That 1% to 100% left a deep impression on her, and now, the young man standing in the wind and snow had already fired 2 shots at her. On the city wall, Zhuqiyu asked the sniper, Are you ready? Yes. Zhumu Ran slowly raised his hand as tears mixed with blood fell from his eyes. Luo Qingshun closed her eyes and didn't plan on running. Everything had already been done. The previous host had killed him in the parallel world, so she would let him kill her here to repay the debt. Chapter 743. Luo Qingshun was surprised as she shouted 4 words in her heart at that moment. Space and time freeze. Ding! 500 exchange points has been taken. Successfully exchanged for space and time freeze. The surrounding snowflakes were instantly frozen in place. Every snowflake seemed to have suddenly stopped and was firmly fixed in the air. The first half of the bullet had already entered Zhumu Ran's head, and the tears that fell from his eyes were frozen in the air. Luo Qingshun charged forward without any hesitation and tightly hugged him, using all her strength. Zhumu Ran, Zhumu Ran, Zhumu Ran. She cried out in a hoarse voice. I know that you must be working hard to break through the darkness. I know that shooting me must be 1,000 times more painful than me. I know everything. She slowly raised her left hand and pulled out the bullet bit by bit. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed his slightly red lips. Very cold, very cold. It was like it was cold to the depths of one's heart, making one unable to feel any warmth. Host, the time freeze is about to end. She softly replied in her heart, but she didn't react at all as she continued to silently kiss him. The place near his temple was empty. She didn't know if he could live or not. If he couldn't, she would be with him in this life. There was a sudden gust of wind in her ear, and she knew that the time freeze was over. Zhumu Ran's dark red eyes were filled with endless shock, but he couldn't resist her kiss at all. The blood from the half-hole fell down drop by drop, flowing down his cheeks like a waterfall. What? How is this possible? Jean Wendan, standing not far away, had a look of disbelief. How did she come here? How did she reach his side so quickly? No, why did she kiss him? No, definitely not. The next second, she picked up the Japanese katana and pointed it at her abdomen, her eyes filled with determination. Little sister, you want to cut your stomach? Jeannie grabbed her wrist and said, You can't. You can, big brother. Jean Wendan's eyes were sinister as she said, The professor said that the blood on the stomach is the symbol of Japan. It can stimulate the fighting spirit of these armor-breaking soldiers. We don't need armor-piercing soldiers. Jean, he roared angrily. To what extent do you want to go? Even if he becomes your exclusive armor-breaking soldier, he still doesn't love you. He would never kill the person he loved the most for you. There are loopholes in this experiment. No, get lost. Jean Wendan forcefully pushed Jean He away and cut her abdomen with the long blade. Blood instantly flowed out. But Zhumu Ran, standing in the middle of the sand, didn't react at all. His eyes gradually became clear, becoming as firm and unyielding as before. There was also a deep sense of guilt and indulgence. He suddenly hugged Luo Qingshun and forcefully pressed his lips against hers, but his consciousness was gradually blurring. The loss of blood from the poison was consuming him bit by bit, but he was willing to use all his strength to hold her tight. Noises came from the surroundings, from Yu Zhuqiyu, from Jin Wendan, from the wounded 110 Division soldiers, from the anger of hot-blooded soldiers. But she didn't seem to hear a single word. She hugged him and looked up slightly. Crystal-clear tears came from the corners of her eyes as she looked at Zhumu Ran with pursed lips. "Promise me. Don't die no matter what, all right?" The wind, sand, and snow mixed together and blew past her ears. Chapter 744. Right, he didn't die, but he also didn't wake up. In the early years of the Republic, medicine wasn't developed, so living in a Western hospital was like walking through the gates of hell. Zhumu Ran was the same. She had already forgotten how she brought him back, covered in blood. She just knew that her left hand was soaked in his blood and his body was becoming colder. The only thing worth being happy about was that Jin Wendan was dead. Moreover, she was killed by herself. How ironic, how laughable. She had used all methods for love. She didn't even hesitate to commit suicide. But Luo Qingshan felt that her death was too easy. This kind of scheming traitor, it wasn't too much to kill her by 1,000 cuts. In the Battle of Aning, the Japanese were defeated. Jin saw his little sister die in front of him, and his mind was in chaos as he attacked without caring about anything. Zhuqiyu was already prepared. There were landmines under the yellow sand, and adding in the gunfire, the Japanese were defeated. Jin wanted to stay and prepare for a sneak attack, but he never thought that all the rivers nearby would be frozen. It was like the heavens wanted to kill their emperor, not letting them invade the land of the Qing. Young Miss Nizi was filled with rage and ordered the troops to retreat. But Zhuqiyu led the 11th Regiment to attack Jin He, and he died on the spot. Zhuqiyu took Jin He's corpse and had young Miss Nizi exchange it for Pine Moon City. Otherwise, he would cut off Jin He's flesh piece by piece, throwing a piece into the yellow sand each day. Pine Moon City was the town where the armor-breaking soldiers were captured. It was the closest city to Aning City. In the end, young Miss Nizi agreed. Jin He was her only son. Even if he died, he couldn't die in a place filled with ants. In her eyes, it was too easy for the Japanese Empire to take back these cities. But they didn't know that after a few decades, they would be forced to leave and sign an unconditional surrender agreement. The Zhumu Manor. Luo Qingshan sat in front of Zhumu Ran's bed. She didn't light a candle, but rather turned on the light. The light was very bright and had a bit of warmth, but the person lying in bed didn't react at all. He had been sleeping for 7 days. The doctor at the Western clinic told them that there were many nerves around his temples. It was normal for him to be in a deep sleep. Knock, knock. Someone knocked on the door. Luo Qingshan softly said, "Come in." Her tone was not depressed, but filled with as much sunshine and strength as possible, because she knew that Zhumu Ran knew everything she said and did now. He must be working much harder than she was. Perhaps he was trying his best to find an exit in the boundless darkness. Over and over again, even if he desperately banged his head against the wall and bled, he would definitely not turn back. This was Zhumu Ran, the Zhumu Ran who didn't hesitate to pull the trigger on his own head for her. Zhuqiyu opened the door and walked in. He sighed softly and said, "Go out for a walk. I'll take care of him." He couldn't bear to see Luo Qingshan like this. He forced a smile and buried all his sadness in the bottom of his heart. But she didn't know that this made her even more pitiful. Luo Qingshan looked at Zhumu Ran lying in bed and said, "All right, I was thinking of cooking some seafood porridge for him tonight." Although he couldn't wake up, they could at least use the rice porridge and force him to drink it. Chapter 745. She smiled faintly, and there was a hint of bitterness in her smile. But she knew that she had to smile. Aning City regained its former prosperity. Many novel foreign toys started to flow in bit by bit, opening up a new world. Luo Qingshan bought a few prawns and a pair of baby dolls and wedding clothes. She wanted to go home quickly, but she didn't expect to meet Yi Yongjun, whom she hadn't seen for a long time, at the entrance of the flower-gazing house. He was slightly drunk, and when he walked, he swayed left and right. But when he saw Luo Qingshan, he still called out to her, "Yo, isn't this my fiancé?" "Oh, no, ba. Luckily, I haven't married yet. Otherwise, the one suffering right now would be me." His voice was very loud, and he was holding a wine cup in his hand. Instantly, he attracted a crowd of onlookers. Mayor Luo, quickly take a look. This is the daughter of the Luo residents, Luo Qingchun, who scolded me for going in and out of brothels. Ha ha ha. What a pity, what a pity. She's now a widow. Yi Yongjun was naturally very angry. Previously, he was humiliated by the Luo family and Zhuo family together. He was a person who would take revenge. Now that he finally had this opportunity, he still had to gain the upper hand with his mouth. Yo, it's her. One of the brothel girls wearing green clothes said, So what if she's a big family's young miss? Her looks are just like that. What a Ning City's #1 beauty. She's not even as good as me. TSK. The melon-eating crowd sighed. It seemed that no matter what the situation was, the eyes of the masses were bright. Chirp. Kiss my little Luo. Yi Yongjun made a gesture, making the girl called Luo blush. No matter what, Yi Yongjun was also a regular at the brothel. There was no lack of girls who wanted to fight for his favor. This Luo was the #1 character. At this moment, Luo Qingshan was expressionless. Her pair of clear eyes were extremely cold. Her brows moved slightly as she said, What? Want to stop me? When Luo heard that, she was clearly frightened by Luo Qingshan's aura. He took 2 steps back, his eyes filled with displeasure. Mayor, who was standing beside her, was indignant. She thought of herself as a big sister and shielded Luo behind her. So what if I'm blocking you? It's broad daylight. The sound of 2 guns being loaded rang out, and the woman called Mayor's face instantly paled. Her legs went limp and her lips trembled as she said, You can't do this. You wouldn't dare. Why wouldn't I dare? Luo Qingchun snorted coldly. Her eyes were bloodshot. It seemed that all the patience she had been enduring these days had broken out. She pointed the revolver at Mayor's head and sneered, I killed Hitoda. I killed Kuchi. What's so difficult about killing you? The girl called Mayor, who was paralyzed on the ground, had fear in her eyes. She kept begging for mercy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't recognize Mount Tai. I'm sorry. Miss Luo, please show mercy. Don't bother with a brothel girl like me. She snorted coldly and slowly got up. She looked at Yi Yongjun, who was a little embarrassed, and said, What about you? Are you sober? Do you want me to help you? When she said the last sentence, the corner of her mouth outlined a dangerous smile. It made the onlookers unconsciously feel scared. Yi Yongjun was even more unsteady. Chapter 746. Luo Qingchun, what is so great about you? Shoot if you have the skills. Shoot at this master's heart. Shoot here. Yi Yongjun pointed at his chest with a trembling finger, but he unconsciously covered it. All right. Luo Qingchun suddenly raised the gun and shot into the blue sky. This shot scared Yi Yongjun so much that he knelt down and held his head. He shouted in a trembling voice, Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Humans would eventually become weak at the moment of death. They would start to become afraid, and they would start to become less fearless. Luo Qingchun gave a cold snort and put the gun in her pocket. When she passed by him, she didn't forget to say, Just based on you, fiancé, why don't you go home and look in the mirror? You really are far from him, all right? Guangdang. The 2 dolls at her waist fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. There was a trembling laugh around them. Yi Yongjun was still holding his head, and his heart was beating fast, but his heart was filled with joy. Luo Qingchun looked at the 2 dolls, and her eyes misted over. They couldn't be a pair in the end. Even the dolls couldn't be together. She ignored Yi Yongjun and bent down. Just as she was about to pick up the shard, she realized that a cold fingertip was tightly gripping her hand. Tears came down, and she kept her head down, not even having the strength to look up. She was afraid that when she looked up, it would break all the hope in her heart. Don't pick it up. His cool voice slowly entered her ears with a bit of pampering. Hiss! At this moment, everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air. He continued, If you like it, we can make one when we go back. She suddenly looked up and didn't look at his face at all. She threw herself into his embrace and said in a broken voice, Zwamu ran, Zwamu ran, Zwamu ran. At this moment, her mind was completely blank. There were only these 3 words, densely packed with these 3 words. I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. He hugged her tightly, every word entering her heart. He tried so hard to wake up so that he could stand firmly by her side when she was being bullied. Zwa, zwa, zwa. Young Marshall Zwa. Oh my God, it's really young Marshall Zwa. So handsome. How can he be so handsome? Those 2 girls from the brothel were so embarrassing. That's right, and this young Master Yi. Because of Zwamu Rant's appearance, the surrounding voices all fell to one side, completely standing on Commander's side. At this moment, Yi Yongjun's expression was incomparably ugly. The faces of the 2 brothel girls had already turned green. He completely ignored everyone's gazes and helped her up. He hugged her and said, "Fiancé, let's go home." Yes. She nodded gently, like a well-behaved little wife, completely different from the way she had fired the gun just now. They were surrounded by envious gazes, accompanied by cheers as they left. They held each other's hands tightly, ready to welcome the next happy time. However, in this life, they lived very short lives. The Japanese kept attacking, and in the end, Ning City couldn't escape the fate of falling even if they resisted. That year, the snow was very big. They didn't want the Japanese to capture them and threaten their country. They set a large fire and burned down the Zwa manor. He hugged her and asked, "Are you afraid?" "No." She softly rubbed against his chest. "With you here, there's nothing to be afraid of. I believe that we will definitely welcome a day of victory. Definitely, of course, I promise you, they used a lifetime to protect this city and this country. Although the city was destroyed, their faith remained." Chapter 747. Deep feelings aren't as good as long-time companionship. Love doesn't need to be said. Zwamu Ran. Number 0520 Zwamu Ran. I am a soldier. I entered the army at the age of 8 and went from being a sentry to a commander. I thought that I would dedicate my life to the army, but I never thought that a person like me would have feelings. This was something that I thought was funny and boring, but I used my life to protect it, believing it without a doubt. Because of her appearance, my entire life changed. I wasn't fighting alone. I wasn't hopeless. When we first met, she was wearing a blue shirt and a black dress, looking like a student who had just returned from studying abroad. Her marksmanship was very accurate. Even I couldn't see it clearly, but she had already taken care of all the enemies. I couldn't help feeling an exploration that came from the depths of my heart. Only later did I know that this exploration was the beginning of my feelings, and I wasn't willing to admit it. She blocked 2 bullets for me, and she fell off the cliff with me. I could even feel my heart beating fiercely, but I wasn't willing to admit that this throbbing came from the bottom of my heart. But when she told me to go alone, I wasn't willing to go. To be honest, I really was afraid at that time. I was afraid that she would die if I left. On the rugged mountain path, countless thorns cut through my skin. I couldn't feel the pain. I just knew that I had to be fast, because there was someone. She was waiting for me. However, the heavens didn't follow my wishes. When I returned to the cave again, she was no longer there. I didn't know where she went. There were no footprints around. She had just disappeared in a thin air. She didn't wait for me. We met again at our family's manor. When I saw her standing with my big brother, there was a very strange feeling in my heart. It wasn't that comfortable. It was like there was a large stone in my chest. I had never felt this way before. I didn't know what I was thinking at all. She had a faint smile, and I suddenly grabbed her arm. But the words she said to me were so formal. I felt that she was distancing herself from me. I didn't know why, but a girl who blocked 2 bullets was distancing herself from me. Later I learned that she didn't want me to go with her. I never thought that she would be going to Kuchi's manor. Heavens, even I might not be able to return from this place. Why is she so bold? After hearing the news from my brother, my heart was in a mess. I didn't even know why I was panicking. There was only one thought in my mind. Run, run, I want to save her, that's all. On the way running, my head suddenly cleared. I seemed to know what I was thinking and what I wanted. When I stood in front of her, Kuchi said that he wanted me to make a choice. I knew that there were some things that couldn't be escaped. I never thought that I would fall in love with someone so easily. Moreover, it was the kind of love that I couldn't extricate myself from. She looked at me anxiously, urging me to hurry up and shoot. but I knew I couldn't do it. If it was a bet with her life and mine, I hoped that no matter who won or lost, I would be the one to die. In that case, there was no need for this bet to begin. I slowly raised my hand, intending to end it. After all, I realized that I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I liked her, but I didn't know how to say it or how to do it. I stood in front of her like a wooden fool. Chapter 748. When I was about to pull the trigger from one second to the next, I found myself experiencing something inconceivable. I actually went from the center to behind the curtain in the corner, and she was standing beside me. Kuchi was already dead. I didn't know how she did it, but it was too miraculous. After that, I went to the Luo residence to ask her father to marry me. Actually, I was very nervous. I didn't know if my sincerity could move Luo Gong, but I knew that I had to do my best and give my all. It was a good thing that everything went smoothly before the wedding, but on the day of the wedding, God seemed to have played a big joke on me. My bride disappeared. The most important person in my life disappeared. For 3 days and 3 nights, I didn't sleep a wink. I studied all the maps, but I didn't find anything. And when Zhuqiyu told me that it might be Jin Wendan, I really wanted to slap myself. It was my negligence. It was all my fault. As a soldier, I didn't let down everyone in the city, but I let down the one I loved the most. At that time, I felt my heart gradually turning black. My innocent Jin residents made a deal with Jin Wendan. I wasn't sure if I would kill her entire family if she really killed her. I heard that falling to the devil with a single thought was like that. It was a good thing that Jin Wendan promised me, so I rushed to the dungeon without hesitation. But when I saw her weak, breathing, lying in front of me, my heart skipped a beat. No one should be able to understand that kind of despair and fear. I hugged her, and her entire body was cold. No matter how I called her, she didn't react at all. But I never thought that Jin Wendan would want to turn her into an armor breaker. With me here, she definitely couldn't. When I took the needle for her, I felt the blood in my body boiling. Bit by bit, it corroded my heart, just like the spread of poison. My mind started to blur, and my actions started to go out of control. I could only clench my teeth and let Zhuqiyu take her away, because I knew that I would soon become her enemy. Soon, it was really soon. Dust and snow flew everywhere. I was in the dark. I couldn't control my own actions, but I tried again and again. I knew I was shooting at her, and it took everything I had to deflect. But when Jin Wendan's perverted self-harm angered the poison in my body, it was a hypnotic command. At that moment, I knew that I couldn't control myself. Then, let's end it like this. If I had the last bit of strength left in me, I would raise the gun and point it at myself instead of her. But she showed me another miracle. I didn't know why, but in the next second, she was already by my side, just like when she was in Kuchi's mansion. She hugged me and cried, and I realized that I could control myself. I turned around and hugged her. I was afraid that she would disappear from my side in the next second. Even if my eyelids were heavy, even if my strength was fading away, I still hoped to hug her until the last second before my death. People in town often say that I like her to the point of morbidity. Yes, I admit. After all, we were not born the same year, month, and day, but I will definitely die with her. If there was no Luo Qingshan in this world, there would be no Zhumu Ran in this world. Chapter 749. Lori's words. The movie 22 will be released soon, so even if it is a documentary, it is worth looking forward to, because that was the heaviest and most meaningful aspect of history. Is the author done? The system felt that the author was wasting time. All right, since Little Fairy Lori has taken up most of the system's time, we'll directly enter the 10 questions. Let's welcome our commander, Zhua. Number 0520 Zhumu Ran, please advise. First question, what was your reaction when she took the bullet for you? God, what is she doing? What is she doing? Isn't she afraid of pain? The system also feels that the host is very brave, a girl that makes one's heart ache. Second question, what is your attitude towards the Japanese invasion of China? The author wanted me to ask this, otherwise the system wouldn't ask such a serious question. I want to protect the border because it is the obsession in my heart. There are no mountains or rivers there, only yellow sand, but it is the border of our motherland. The most beautiful place will always be your homeland. Lori's words, no matter how far you go, remember to look back. Perhaps there will be someone with white hair waiting for you to come home. The system will ask itself, go. Third question, when Kuchi gave you a choice, if you knew that the host wouldn't die, would you have fired? I wouldn't. I've said it before, I definitely wouldn't use her life as a bet, whether it was a small risk or a large risk. Thank you, Commander Zwa, for your dog food. Fourth question, were you nervous when you proposed to the host? I didn't propose. I directly announced it. The system silently thought about it, and it seems to be true. Fifth question, after she was taken away, why didn't you think of Jean Wendan? First, my mind was filled with her. I didn't even know that Jean Wendan was missing. Second, Jean Wendan had been by my side as a sniper for a long time, but I was too naive and didn't seriously investigate the Jean manor. Sixth question, who is the person you hate the most in this world? Jean Wendan. I really hate her. From the bottom of my heart, I don't think she deserves to talk about love, because love itself shouldn't be a bondage. If Qin Shan doesn't like me, I won't force her. I'm happy that she's happy. Seventh question, aren't you afraid of poison needles? At that moment, I didn't feel any fear. I just wanted to protect him. I have 2 hands and 2 feet. I can always block all the bullets and swords. Even the system is touched by your words. Woo 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 woo. Eighth question, how did you feel when you saw her being bullied on the streets? Remember those who said that she is not good. I will slowly settle this account with you. His cold eyes narrowed fiercely. Ninth question, do you have anything to say to Lioli? Zwamu Ran thought for a bit before saying, don't abuse me. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. But the system shrugged helplessly as usual. 10th question, as usual, say something to the host. She can hear you. Risking my life to break through the boundless darkness, all for the moment you enter my arms. Chapter 750. When she opened her eyes, it went from a flame to a chaotic space. There was a smoking mirror and her favorite princess lace bed. Welcome back, host. How is the host's mood this time? The love story is very warm. The rise and fall of the country is very painful. The early years of the Republic of China was a time of new things. Closing the country was the most fundamental reason why we lost to the Japanese. The cowardice of the court allowed the Japanese to plunder without restraint. Every dynasty must shed blood. The world that has been divided for a long time must be united, and the world that has been united for a long time must be divided. This was the most serious sentence the system had said in a long time, but Luo Qinshan felt that it was very reasonable. The following is a summary of the mission. Host, please properly look over it. Name, Luo Qinshan World, loving the Republic of China. They are old enemies. Mission completion rate, 100%. There is currently 1 item in the EXP dimensional storage, iPhone 999. The host doesn't want this thing anymore. Exchange points, 16,900, 5,000 deducted from the last world. No change from before. Base points, 40. The host's 14th mission panel is below. Appearance, stamina, intelligence, figure. I don't understand the meaning of this panel. If I don't have stamina, I'll die. Host, don't worry. This panel has 2 stages. You will also have to go through 2 stages. Damn, I'm a bit scared. Luo Qinshan felt that every time the system had this kind of special mission, it always made her hair stand on end. All right? Host, don't be afraid. Charge forward, charge forward. The system silently said, since there was no use in being afraid. 2 stages, so I'll die. The system doesn't know. Trash system. Luo Qinshan couldn't help cursing in a low voice. You clearly know, and you're still pretending. After that, the image in the bronze mirror changed. Mission grade, experience gained, 500. Exchange points gained, 6,000. Female lead. Luo Qinshan male lead. Shi Jinyi supporting female lead. Luo In supporting male lead. Imo fan mission content. Return to 10 years before the female lead died and obtain the love of the male lead Shi Jinyi. Memory is being imported. Please accept it quickly. While accepting the memories, Luo Qinshan expressed that the story was indeed a little complicated. The male lead is an extremely powerful vampire. The original host is a puppet doll that he personally created with his own blood. They lived in a city that never sleeps. Vampires never needed to sleep, so in their eyes, there was no such thing as night. The male lead was born on the day that divine light descended from the heavens. Multicolored light filled the sky, and he was hailed as the most powerful expert that was about to be born in the She clan. However, he had to experience a heavenly tribulation once in his life, and the chance of surviving the 99 heavenly thunders awakening was only 1%. When he was 3 years old, he was able to use rapid movement. When he was 10 years old, he could feel telepathic pain. However, geniuses would eventually attract jealousy. There were many families in the Nightless City. Even if he was the child of the king, there were inevitably people who wanted to assassinate him. He knew all about this. He didn't make any friends. He was silent, cold, and bloodthirsty. But under these circumstances, he used his own blood to create a puppet doll. Creating a world of vampires was a very terrifying ability. Although he had spent 10 years and used a large amount of his powers to succeed. But when this doll really appeared in front of him, his lips curled into a smile for the first time since he was 16.